Well, greetings everybody, and welcome to another edition of the Breakfast Club Jamboree. And for the very first time ever, uh, I'm starting it off by myself. I do expect others to come in as the evening progresses. I know for a fact, though, that several people won't be with us tonight. Sister Danger has other things to do, and so does Agent of Doubt. So it probably will just be me and Joe and Rob, or maybe me and Joe and Rob and Kazoom. And I invite lots of people, but you never know who's going to show up one week to another. It really depends. Anyway, so whoever you are out there, thank you for being here with me for the moment. And I anticipate more people will come on soon. Since I'm starting this off by myself, it's a bit difficult to know what to talk about without sort of trampling on later conversations. I don't want to have to repeat myself. I'll start here, though. As you can see, I'm not at home. I'm on the road at the moment. Hi, for Jonah. How you doing? Yeah, I'm on the road at the moment. So, yeah, that's another thing I should say. Because I'm on the road for the moment, you know how it is when you go on a road trip, you always forget something at home, right? And what this idiot forgot was I still have the English plug for my laptop that I'm using for this show, and I left this stupid adapter at home. So unfortunately, I only have enough time for the show until my battery runs out. So this will be a shorter than normal Jamboree, even after other people turn up. So yeah, I do apologize for that. That's why I call it Pop Jamboree, because yeah, I don't really know how long the battery will last. Probably about an hour, hour and a half, something like that. So anyway, yeah, waffling, waiting for someone to someone else to pop into the room. Yeah, we knocked off about almost 500 miles today, and you know, that can be a bit stressful, driving all day long. But I actually quite like road trips. But I've done this road trip now several times, and I think henceforward when I travel, now that I've been double vaccinated, I'm feeling like I can fly now with a bit more confidence. So I'm looking forward to doing that more often when I have to travel. Anyway, so lots going on this week. I don't even know where to start. And again, I kind of wanted to wait before I really jumped into anything sort of social, political, whatever, until we get more guests in. I expect Joe should be here any minute, but I'm just going to look over there real quick and see. One more. Oh, okay. Rob says he's going to be late, which is ironic since the show starts late anyways, and okay, there we go. So hopefully we'll get someone else in here in just a minute. For those of you who are with me, CBR Vegas, thank you for hanging in there with the lack of sort of conversational jamboree type thing going on. It shouldn't be too much longer before we get anybody in here. And, you know, if I start to sweat, you guys can take the piss out of me in the comments. That's fine. Anyway, yeah. Why don't you guys who are here and willing to talk in the comment section, ask me a question and I will answer it. We can do that, and while we wait for other people to show up. I'm fine, thank you. Yeah, I'm like I mentioned, I think just before you got in the room, I'm on the road at the moment, which is why the background is different tonight. And yeah, we knocked off like almost 500 miles today. I'm in Kansas, and I quite like driving through Kansas on one level because it's, you know, but it's also like completely featureless. When I do road trips and I have to go south or north, it's or sorry, south or west, it's a lot more what's the word, scenic. And Kansas is pretty flat, you know, and extremely windy to drive through. Yeah, Kansas, I don't want to call it boring because it has a certain kind of charm. But the very first time I ever drove through Kansas, I'll tell you this for true. it rained on us like it rained like I've never seen before in my whole life. And I've lived in Alaska, I lived in Britain, both places rain a lot. And Jesus Christ, it was like someone turned on a fire hose straight onto the windshield. You're at your Minnesota cabin? Is that what MN is? Minnesota, I think. I think it is, yeah. Or is it Montana? No, Montana's MT. That's it. In Minnesota then. Yeah. Yeah. Well, I'm on my way to go see the grandkids, which is I'm really looking forward to, you know. Yeah. Got 3 granddaughters and a grandson. So looking forward to that. And other things as well. Going to be you know, doing some good visiting though, that's for sure. And now that everybody's vaccinated, you know, the in-laws are vaccinated and me and my gal are vaccinated. So it should be like almost kind of normal, you know. I'll finally get to shake Dad's hand for the first time. And I'm looking forward to that because, you know, you can get a measure of a person when you shake hands. So out here fishing and stuff in Minnesota. Sounds good. Incoming will be Serious Mind momentarily, seeming to have a bit of connection problems. But or maybe so am I. There he is.
Hello. How's it going, Paul?
Greetings, Joe. How you doing, my friend?
Oh, mostly good. I'm kind of in a weird mood, but I'm all right.
All right. Well, you look like you're in a good mood, I gotta say.
Yeah,
you're looking pretty good.
Yeah, the week was work was rugged, but like things went well, and we got a little bit of a respite because one of the systems we installed, which was going to be the first of 3 on the same site in 4 weeks, they had a mechanical problem that they can't fix for 2 weeks, so that's going to delay one of the 3 systems until September. So the schedule got a lot easier.
Right. Wow. Well, I mean, I can appreciate having a lot of balls to juggle. You know, when I had my my life in Britain there, especially toward the end when I was living in Kingston, I had simplified my life down to a point, Joe, where I mean, I literally had one bill to pay. That was my rent. Yeah, that was my rent, and everything was included, right? So
That's
yeah.
cool.
Yeah. So on top of that, it's just whatever you spend on food and recreation, you know. So and in my case, food is recreation. So you know, yeah.
That's a good situation. Well, that's you know, I was having a conversation with a friend last night about that kind of thing, and why I kind of hate all these streaming services because I like just getting one bill instead of having to keep track of, like, you know, 9 different services or whatever. You know, first world problems, but
Yeah, right.
yeah. Oh no, you know, but but yeah, I mean, it's well, and speaking of first world problems, that's the other one big advantage. You know, when if you're doing better than average, is being able to put all your bills on auto pay and not have to worry about paying anything late because you know you got money in the account to pay the bill when it comes.
Well, that's what I used to do, you know, in the UK. I had everything on direct debit. I didn't have to think about it. I knew I made more money than I spent, and so as long as I was careful, boom, you know, I just didn't have to think about it. Same with I used to donate to charity a lot back then, and basically it was money that I didn't think I made. It was just, you know, go in and go out, go in, go out, go in, go out. And that's kind of how, if you're going to be involved in donating charity, if that's the most you can do, which I think is the most I can really do, then yeah, I think, you know, that's the attitude you have to adopt is it's not my money. Boom.
Right.
You know.
Well, and even like for saving, like people have a hard time saving money. You know, it takes a lot of discipline. So, like when I was, you know, Suzanne and I were digging out of financial trouble years ago. Basically, you know, my financial advisor, who was also a friend of mine, he said, like, treat savings like a bill because you pay your bills. So we actually started doing like automatic withdrawal to put into savings accounts, and we were actually able to save money because it forced the discipline because we just took away certain money that we had to force ourselves to live on less.
Well, I've been there, man. I mean, like I say, I had my life simplified to the point where I lived in one of the most expensive cities in Europe, if not the world, and yet I didn't make hardly any money. You know what I mean? But you know, if you you know, it comes from knowing people and finding opportunities and you know stuff like that. You can't just like get it off of roommate.com or whatever. You know,
Right.
find a roommate or whatever.
Yeah.
Although when I first moved to London, that is exactly what I ended up having to do. When Jen
Really?
kicked me out. Yeah, well, I lived with Jen on the boat for like 4 months, and then she got pissed off because I think she wanted her privacy back. So she kicked me off the boat, and I was like in a pickle. So I had to go on and find a roommate. And I got really lucky in one sense because I found this guy who didn't want me to leave like a deposit. He was happy with just my first month's rent up front. And he said I could move out, you know, without any notice if I wanted to, and blah, blah. I'm like, wow, okay, you know. But Joe, this is a guy who I've spoken to you about before in previous jamborees. Who, I mean, nice guy on like dozens of different levels, not very bright, total xenophobe and bigot, basically. I mean, you know, I mean, like,
Oh, you're that guy. Yeah. Okay.
yeah. I mean, like, we could get along fine as long as we didn't watch the news together, because that was it, you know. Because the thing is, like, Kevin, we shared a house, right? So it's his house.
Right.
So
Right.
from my point of view, a man can say whatever he wants in his own house, you know, straight up. And so, especially when you're the person who's renting in the room in that guy's house, you know. So he would say his shit, and I would say my shit, Joe. And neither one of us really tried to change each other's mind, because we both knew from the off that there was no way. I mean, from my point of view, he was a Cockney bigot, and from his point of view, I was a tree hugging hippie, and that neither of those things could possibly change. But he respected me on a level that I didn't think people like him were able to do. And when we talked about this before, you mentioned, and I respect the fact where you're coming from. You said that's easy for you, Paul, because you don't have anything to lose in this relationship, you know. And I get that, man. I do. You know, from my point of view, it was all intellectual sparring and just basically saying, look, you know, if you're going to say your stupid shit, you're going to get my shit back.
Right.
But we never ever had an argument. You know, we just accepted we couldn't change each other's mind, and that was it.
I mean, this is one of the things that, you know, I may have said this in the Jamboree before, but I know I've said it elsewhere if I haven't said it here, is that one of the things about social media that has changed things, not always for the better, is that, you know, people say, well, social media has caused us to create bubbles. I disagree. We always had bubbles. What social media has done is it caused those bubbles to intersect one another, and that creates conflict. Like, I play strategy games. So strategy games, there's a lot of war-based things, whether it's sci-fi or modern war, ancient war, you know, whatever. So it tends to attract a more conservative crowd. And so a lot of the people that I play or have played with are way to the right of me, and some believe some pretty reprehensible shit. But way back, I kind of knew that in a vacuum. But since we would just play the game and we didn't get involved, we didn't talk about those things to any great detail, or we would talk to them to a certain point, to the point where they would get uncomfortable, then we would stop. Because it's just like the old thing, you know, you remember when we were young, people always said, don't talk about politics or religion.
In polite company,
Right,
or an unfamiliar company.
right.
Yeah.
And so those were boundaries we kind of set. We were living in those bubbles. But now on social media, you're friends with somebody, and unless you unfollow them, you're going to see all the things they say, including all the objectionable things that they say, or things that you find objectionable anyway. And there were some people that the stuff they posted were, to me, so objectionable that I could no longer be friends with them. Now, I might still play a game with them, but we're not friends anymore.
Well, yeah, friends is a different sort of thing. I mean, me and you are good friends. We've known each other over 10 years on the internet. And as far as, I mean, 10 years ago, people used to argue if you could have real friends if you only knew each other on the internet. You know what I mean? And I think society has moved on past that. Everybody has internet friends now. And I don't think you really necessarily look, I don't know. I don't have any less respect for you than someone I've known in person for 10 years. You know what I mean?
Right. And you heard what we said. You're one of my favorite people in the world because, you know, yeah, we haven't got a chance. We only got to hang out that one night, but you're a genuine person. And as much as anybody can know somebody, I think I know who you are. And I think
Well, I appreciate that, Joe. And if I wasn't so vain, I'd be blushing. Um, but I knew that already. I knew that already.
And in a way, Paul, also, I think because you and I, you're very much like me in one important way, beyond the politics and everything else, is we're both people who wear our heart on our sleeve, and we're both.
Is there any other way?
There are a lot of people who don't, but yeah, it's no other way for me. I'm not capable of being otherwise. Or I'll put it this way: if I'm in a situation where I feel I have to be otherwise, I'm not comfortable.
Fair enough. Listen, Joe, let's jump into a little political conversation because I see that Vegas and Tommy have brought up just DeSantis and whether he's going to be Trump's running mate in 2024 or is he going to be the nominee in 2024. And there's absolutely no doubt that DeSantis is jockeying for one of those two things. And I think personally, my opinion, Trump isn't going to make it to 2024 without an indictment. You know what I mean? I just don't think look at what's happening with Giuliani, which is a separate topic, which we can save for a little while. But I mean, like, considering that, these guys have their high beams on Trump right now. Do you know what I mean? And did you get people, though, like, say, for example, Matt Gaetz and Rudy Giuliani, and people, you watch them still trying to, like, what's his name? Matt Gaetz is going to be going out with Marjorie Taylor Greene on a national tour to call out rhinos, and basically Republican in name only these days apparently means that you don't support Trump.
Right.
And that isn't what it used to mean. No. In fact, people who support Trump but don't have traditional conservative values should have been called the rhinos in the first place. But what's happening in the Republican Party right now is particularly gruesome and ugly. And I don't really pretend I can predict which way it's going to go. But I think the reason Matt Gaetz has like pushed all his chips into the middle of the table with this shit is because he's counting on Trump getting back in, and he needs that pardon, man. The only way out for Gaetz is if he gets a pardon.
Right. I mean,
if he's going to get a pardon from Biden, I think we can count on that.
Oh yeah, hell no. I mean, here's the thing. To your point about the rhinos. I mean, I remember a few months ago in Georgia when there was a big gathering of pro-Trump people, like basically protesting the governor and the secretary of state because they wouldn't basically commit perjury or election fraud to tilt things for Trump. And so you had these, Republicans, longtime Republicans who support Trump, but basically saying, look, we just don't have the votes. It's just the way it is. And so they're having these Republican Party meetings. And I remember this one Trumpist stood up and so the guy's trying to argue, like, look, we're Republicans. We're all going to be together. And this guy said, I don't give a shit about the Republican Party. If you're not for Trump, you're not with me, or something to that effect. And I was like, ooh, see, I told you guys made a deal with the devil.
Isn't that like just openly fascist? I mean, if it's about a person and not a policy, if it's about a person and not a party, if it's about a person and not an ideology, it's about it. I mean, you can't call Trump an ideology. You can't even really call Trumpism an ideology.
No, he does not have an ideological center at all, other than bigotry and sexism.
And self-interest. That's his center. That's his orbit. That's his entire galaxy.
That's right. And so the thing is that, and the proof, as Rob pointed out several times, like, and I think you have as well, they made the platform whatever Trump says. So they literally gave up whatever ideals that they had on the altar of Trump. So it is a cult now. It is a cult. I don't know if that it inherently makes it fascist, but it certainly makes it a cult.
Well, it always was a cult, that's for sure. Whether it's fascist or not, I suppose, is a matter of debate these days. But when Trump was president, I was pretty certain of it. And, I just want to reference the chat. Draft Science said Rob already messaged us and said he was going to be late for the chat. And this chat started half an hour later than normal anyway.
Right.
So there's that. And CBR Vega says Trumpism is right-leaning centrist populism. I don't know. I've seen people on the news calling Trumpism populism, and I don't think appealing to white supremacy is populism. I think appealing to sort of like bread and butter sort of working class values is populism.
Well, see, that's the thing though, because for in a large segment of the United States population, those two things go hand in hand. For about 30% of the population, those two things go hand in hand. So that's what. So I would say Vegas isn't really wrong. It's not right leaning though. It's pretty to the right. But yeah, because it is populism. It's not your classical, small government, low taxes kind of republicanism. It's this other thing, and that's I've said before. It's all about white identity. And to a lesser extent, Christian identity. Although even obviously we know, Trump is the most. I mean, I think he could almost qualify as the Antichrist himself. I mean, he's does not have any. He does not share any traits with Christian's supposed favorite person.
He doesn't share any traits with like, normal human beings, as far as I'm concerned. He's literally got the worst of all the bad qualities. He's greedy, he's selfish, he's narcissistic, he's beyond vain. I don't know. Joe, before you got here, I was saying to the audience that unfortunately, I'm on the road, as you can see, and unfortunately, in my haste to get out today, I didn't bring the converter plug for my English plug, which I've still been using for this laptop. So I'm on battery power, and according to the little thing here, I've got half an hour left.
Oh, gee.
So, this is going to be a pretty short Jamboree, because if I don't turn it off, it will just keep on going, Joe. It'll just keep going.
I have full control.
You won't be able to turn it off. That's the problem. If I go, because I've got the ops, if I go, you can't turn the damn stream off. It'll just keep going. So,
well, I guess if you before that happens, I guess if you, it's up to you. You don't have to do this, but if you wanted to send me the credentials, I could post, and then can you get on with your phone if the Jamboree was going on?
Like I can't even do that. I'm sorry to say.
Oh, okay.
The technical difficulties. Long story short, but this laptop that I'm on at the moment is my one from the UK, and it basically the space bar and the B and the N and the M and don't work. Oh. So I can't actually type you the things I need to type you. So that's the truth of the matter. So there we go. Anyway, that's the comedy of errors that my life used to be. You know what I mean? This computer, because of this is how pathetic I used to be. Right when I because of these letters didn't work, my space bar didn't work. I used to have to copy and paste spaces and B's and N's and stuff, and lay them in to use this computer, because I'm the kind of guy who will use something until it absolutely falls apart. A little bit of inconvenience is not enough.
I mean, I've been that way in much of my life, because coming from like my grandparents, being raised by my grandmother and my step grandfather, my grandmother being a child of the Depression, and my step grandfather having had a family during the Depression. Yeah, you didn't waste things, you didn't throw things out unless you absolutely had to do so.
Yeah, that and I mean, like, fuck it, this still works is one of my most commonly used sentences.
Well, here's the thing though. If you get a USB keyboard, plug it into your laptop, you can use an external keyboard.
That's funny you should say that, because I have an external keyboard, which I also left in fucking Colorado. So, honestly, getting ready for all this move has been a very stressful time. We've talked after hours about why, and so the move is in place right now. So. Anyway, but I'll be back soon, and when I get there, I'm going to buy an American plug, which I cannot actually believe I haven't done yet. I've been here for like 10 months, Joe. And, I put the pro in procrastination. That's just how it is. Anyway, so since we've only got like half an hour, I think I want to talk a little bit about Giuliani and stuff, and I'm very curious to know where your head is at on all this stuff, because I see the press seems to think that all this is about Ukraine stuff, and maybe it is, but I mean, Giuliani said some of the most inflammatory stuff of anybody on the 6th of January. When before the riot happened, he said, "Let's have trial by combat." That is unambiguous, right? And I don't care if you're Rudy Giuliani. You shouldn't be able to say that in front of a big crowd who then goes off and has a riot and not have any consequences. If you say that in front of a crowd and everybody just goes, aha, look at that, isn't Rudy funny? Then, okay, I guess it's not inflammatory because it didn't inflame anything. And you could say, well, how could you provoke a riot that people already planned on having? But the bottom line is shit like that is permission.
Right. I mean, the thing is that, well, here's the thing that a lot of people don't realize. I mean, there's a certain kind of bootstrapping that can go on with the DAs. Basically, if they get a warrant to search for specific evidence in like specific places, and in the course of searching for that specific thing, they just happen upon other evidence. That's the I forget the name of the doctrine, but basically plain sight doctrine. So it's like, well, we were here looking. So just say they raided your house looking for drugs, and while they're doing that, you had an illegal handgun or an illegal or a weapon that's obviously prohibited in your house, and it was in the open. They could see it. They could also then charge you for that because they didn't violate the terms of the warrant. So I think in some cases they may be doing this because it's easy to get access to a whole bevy of sources that they could then potentially find evidence of other crimes, like in using the plain sight doctrine.
It's my understanding that to get a warrant, you have to be specific about what you're searching for, and you're not allowed to go on trawling missions to see what else you can find. But
that's right. But if whatever you've come across is in the places you're looking for, like I said, so in that particular instance, or just say I have a warrant to say I'm gonna search Paul's hall closet looking for drugs, and I go in Paul's hall closet looking for drugs, and I also find something else that's illegal. That's also like I could charge you. Could be charged with that because it was in plain sight in the place that the warrant said I was allowed to search. Even though I wasn't searching for that thing, it was now if I said, okay, it's in the whole closet, in a red box in the left corner, and then the illegal thing was in a blue box in the right corner, that would be not allowable. But if it's in the same red box that I asked for, then I can still.
I hear that. I agree with the latest comment by the liberty-minded independent there. Who says, I think they raided Rudy Giuliani to get more evidence and build the case against Trump. I think that's probably true, but to get evidence against Giuliani is also evidence against Trump. I mean, I don't think there's a distinction to be made there. Everything they're looking for against Giuliani, as far as I'm given to understand from what I see on the news anyway, everything they look through for Giuliani is in service to Trump, in Giuliani service to Trump. So I think you cannot separate the two. So I completely agree with that comment, actually. I just want to reference something kind of amusing to me. Draft Science says, the thing about not being able to type in credentials is obviously bullshit. Paul doesn't trust Joe to keep the tone civil. That's a fact. Hilarious. The words Paul doesn't trust Joe don't work in a sentence. For one thing. The other thing is, as Joe can attest to, because I messaged Joe on Facebook, and there's no space between the words, and the letter N is missing. So, he can check it out already. I mean, that would be a pretty elaborate hoax, right?
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. That's the funny part. Yeah, because I saw that and I was like, he must have a dead keyboard.
That's exactly right. Yeah. Anyway, back to the whole Giuliani thing. I mean, how much trouble can Giuliani be in if what they're talking about, if he's being accused of or being investigated for being a foreign agent, an unregistered foreign agent? How much trouble can that be? I'm not talking about prison sentences or whatever, but I mean, he's already very advanced in years, and you can drag these things out a long time. And I'm not so sure. I don't know. I think that's why I agree with what the comments said about they're really fishing for Trump as much as anything else.
Well, I mean, I think it's both, because the thing is that if you think that's one of the things Flynn went up for was unregistered foreign agent. So that's what Michael Flynn got in trouble for, or one of the things. But yeah, I think, as I said before, I think it's definitely a pretext for getting things on Trump. Because, like you said, he was Trump's personal lawyer, And here's the thing. Now, generally speaking, what Rudy said and did for Trump is privileged and inadmissible unless it's in furtherance of a crime. So if your lawyer basically participates in your criminal activity, that behavior is not protected. It's not privileged because now your lawyer is you can't basically your lawyer can't defend you for things they're guilty of doing with you.
Right.
So I think that's what they're kind of banking on, that they're going to find while they look for the Ukraine stuff, they're going to find all that other. Here's one thing too that I wanted to laugh about Andrew Giuliani. He basically said that the FBI came in and took everything except Hunter Biden's hard drives. Well, didn't they tell us that Hunter Biden's hard drives went missing, or the laptop went missing, that it got shipped and it never showed up or whatever, some kind of horseshit like that? So how could Rudy have Biden's hard drives if he said that the mail lost the PC that the drives were in?
Yeah, I find the whole thing hilariously fucking comical, except for Rudy going on Fox and just being allowed to just like literally spout lie after lie about the impropriety of the search and whatever. It's like, dude, they would not. Rudy Giuliani is a seriously prominent American. I mean, he's, I don't know if you want to put him in the top 100 prominent Americans or whatever, but he's definitely up there.
Yeah.
And so in order for them to jump, they're pretty damn sure already, or they wouldn't have been able to get a warrant in the first place.
Right.
Well, that's why I'm not to get back to our earlier what CBR Vegas and others were saying about Trump and DeSantis. I don't think Trump is going to make it to 2024, because if they're this close to Giuliani that they're issuing warrants and seizing his electronic devices, they're 6 months away from Trump.
Right, and that's the thing, because if they're looking for those specific devices, they had to present to a judge what specific things they expect to find. So as for the fact that why bother speculating, because that's what we do on this show, is we talk about topics, and if we didn't have to engage in any
have we met? All I ever did was speculate.
We would just be news reading. This happened, then that happened, and that's a boring fucking show.
Yeah, right. No, I don't know. I mean, I certainly don't have the answers yet, and I find it very interesting because, the once upon a time, not all that long ago, powerful people weren't being held to account, and now you see Getz in hot water because of his own actions. Whether he's found guilty or not remains to be seen, but there's an awful lot of smoke for there to be no fire.
Well, and especially considering that it was actually the Bill Barr Justice Department that was looking into this. So it's not like this is political. This is somebody, one of Trump's boys, that was looking at Gates.
Right.
That's why I think it's kind of hilarious. Gates is trying to turn this into some like partisan hackery. It's like, no, motherfucker, your own boy was looking into you. And, so, if it was political, it's not political in the way you're trying to make it out to be.
Wow. Yeah. Well, I mean, Matt Getz is the epitome of political privilege. He comes from a pedigree.
Okay. When you quote somebody, you have to put in the quote something they actually said. Otherwise, it's a straw man.
Yeah. I've never said this will be the end of Trump, but I mean, what I do think Trump is going to be indicted, and I think that he will not be able to credibly make a run for president in 2024. No. I just don't, that's an awfully long time in politics, man. 3.5 years is a long ass time.
Yeah. I mean, the other thing too, the people that are saying, it's going to be DeSantis. Now, certainly DeSantis is trying to set himself up to be that. And there are other members within the Republican Party that would like that. But that's one thing I have learned in politics in all my years of following it, is that this far away from anything, don't assume anything, because you don't
assume Hillary Clinton's going to be the candidate in 2008, right? Because everybody thought it was a shoe-in,
and Howard Dean is going to be the candidate in 2004, and there's so many things that happen. Like Well, yeah, I remember, so I supported Wesley Clark in 2004, and I remember this is where I first started getting disillusioned in the media was, and granted he's right wing, but David Broder was literally standing next to me, and he reported on what was said at the rally that I went to, completely misrepresented what was said. And I'm like, motherfucker, I know what you heard because I was next to you. You were like 3 inches from me, you know. So and there were so many times that people's fortunes change, suddenly. Well, hell, I mean, we can talk about Kamala Harris now. She's the vice president, but if you remember early on, like the first debate, she was way ahead of the pack because people like really liked what she had to say, and she didn't even make it to the primaries because
That's right.
you just never know what's going to happen. So I'll never say that somebody's done, and I always laugh when someone says it. Until they're done, no one's done.
Right.
Until they're actually done.
Greetings,
Hey,
excellent. As a late arrival, you will not be aware of this, but I am handicapped tonight, and my battery, I have no plug, and my battery is going to run out in like 20 minutes. So this is going to be a very short jamboree. So if you have anything major to contribute, now would be the time.
It's all you, Raven.
Hi.
Hi. It's good to see you. How you been?
Pretty good. Pretty good. Was sorry I'm late, but I had went to my mom's and all of my siblings were there for a celebration for my dad for his birthday.
Right.
So
Oh yeah.
we all got together.
Was it emotional?
No, thankfully. I mean, my mom cried a little bit, but we all just kind of kept talking and
Good.
reminiscing and laughing. So it was good.
Well, that's how it went to be. Once upon a time, my friend Joe right there said to me that when he passes away, he wants it to be a celebration. And I said, fuck that, man. When I die, I want people to cry. I want people to fucking stomp their feet and pull their hair out and fucking wail and bemoan. And that's what I want. But yeah.
My only thing about when I die, like I've always felt like the worst way to die is not so much how you die, but if you die and it has no impact on anybody, then that was a wasted life.
Wow.
If no one's sad, and obviously sometimes people can't, like, you have friends in Australia and you die, they might not make it to your funeral. But
if you have Ebenezer Scrooge's death, though, don't be
surprised when
Black Ghost comes.
Where nobody misses you, nobody gives a shit, nobody cares, no one's even remotely upset that it happened, then that's a wasted life.
I mean, even if people hate you, and you pass and they acknowledge, oh, that piece of shit died, that's better than nobody realizing or noticing.
Yeah.
So.
Exactly.
Because at least at that point, I mean, you've made some kind of an impact on somebody, I mean, you're a splash that made a noise.
Right.
Right.
I put value on that.
Yeah. Well, that's why I think I might have said this before, but to me, the saddest part was, doing genealogies. It hit me one day that because I don't have any children of my own, that while somebody in the future, one of my, great nieces, nephews, whatever, may come across me, no one will ever be looking for me. They might find me out of matter of course, but no one's looking for me. And that made me profoundly sad.
Wow. Yeah, I can dig that. I've gone through all this existential stuff my entire life. You know what I mean? I mean, I used to be even more boring to converse with because all I would talk about is, the great beyond and all this kind of crap, even when I was like really, really high. And that's not what people want to talk about when they're really, really high, except for me. Anyway, yeah. I'm just going to check my time here. I want to make sure I've got 14 more minutes. 14 minutes of joy. Yeah.
That sucks, man. That's a real shame.
But I will get an American plug when I'm in St. Louis, so that's cool.
Okay. What kind of laptop do you have?
This one I'm on is one I got in the UK like 5 years ago or 4 years ago. It's a Dell laptop. I don't know what numbers.
Okay, if it's a Dell, you won't even need to replace the entire plug. You just
No,
need.
I just need to literally get an American end for it. And
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
all. Yeah, and it'll hook over just fine.
Okay.
So yeah, and I can't believe, like I say, I mean, I know I put things off. Oh shit.
Is it going? Uh-oh.
And there it went.
Uh-oh. Oops.
Wow.
Well, I guess it's going to go on longer than we thought. Party. We are in. Well, we're not in control. We're kind of flying blind, but
Wow.
forever.
So did I miss anything?
Not really much. It was just Paul and I talking about a few things. We talked a little bit about Giuliani and what kind of peril he may be in, and are they really going after him, or is it a prelude to get to Trump and so forth?
That could be. I mean, it could be of a, once they get him in a room somewhere, be like, hey, I mean, either we, send you up the river or
Can you see me?
Yeah.
Is my mic hooked up?
Yeah, you're good.
Is my mic okay?
Yeah.
No way. Okay, cool. I'm on my MacBook, but normally my MacBook doesn't work for this stream.
Oh, you're good, man.
You're good.
That's a Christmas miracle.
That's shocking. I'm really pleased. Wow. Okay. Yeah, we're back.
Yeah, excellent.
Hey,
we were playing on the 36-hour Jamboree.
Oh my goodness! Wow.
Well, that makes me supremely happy that you're able to come back.
And me. Oh my God. I honestly, I didn't think it was going to work. I really didn't. So yeah, it's chuffed to bits. Because if I knew this one was going to work, I wouldn't have brought my other fucking crappy old computer in the first place. Because I've tried this one before, but the mic has always been like, not working. So if it turns out there's feedback or anything and you guys need me to mute, just tell me to, and I'll mute until it's my turn to talk.
Okay. What I'll do is I'll go like this.
Perfect. So Rob, before you got here, we were just talking about what's his name? Rudolph the Red-Nosed Mayor, and what do you think his chances are of not being arrested?
Oh no, he's going to be arrested. I think that's pretty much written in stone at this point. I think he'll be arrested, but I think what they're going to do is they're going to try to maneuver him to get Trump. That's what I think.
Hmm.
And hopefully,
unanimous.
yeah. I mean, and hopefully, he decides to give up the goods and then he lies, so they both get Trump and him at the same time.
That'd be nice. I mean, that's one thing that, that people have to remember, because I know there's a lot of Republicans that don't think that those guys will face any justice whatsoever. It's like, well, for the federal charges, Trump's not in charge of that. It's not the Trump Justice Department anymore. So, and we also know, based on what we're hearing now, is that the career people who are generally nonpartisan wanted to go after all this shit back then. So they've already got the goods all lined up. And secondly, the state charges, there's no getting out of that. So, there's now, as to how far it goes, as to what price they pay, I can't say. It's way too early. But there's going to be some legal jeopardy that they're going to have to deal with one way or another.
Thor Jonah says in the comments he wants him arrested, but he's too cynical to think it will happen. I totally understand where you're coming from, because you don't really get to see people of the prominence of Rudy Giuliani going down very often in America. I can't even think of when it's happened in my lifetime when someone that high has fallen. I suppose when I was a little kid and Spiro Agnew had to give up the vice presidency because he took a $3,000 bribe.
Mm.
That's probably the closest thing I can think of to that kind of high level accountability.
Marion Barry went to jail. Former mayor of, actually, he was at the time the current mayor of DC. Although, as Chris Rock pointed out, even after that, when he came back, he actually got reelected after serving his time. Which I thought was a great rant. He's like, smoke crack got his job back. You can't go to McDonald's and smoke crack and get your job back.
Yeah, right. Oh God. Yeah, I love Chris Rock. Wow.
They won't let you get near the Pappy Meals. But,
I don't know. And I just love the fact though that there's these there seems to be this kind of high level accountability, that there's a willingness to go there with Merrick Garland's Justice Department, and I suppose in this case SDNY as well. And they're also the ones who are waiting for Trump to set foot in New York because he's individual number one. I mean, has Trump been to New York since he left the White House?
Not to my knowledge.
Because I think they'll slap him, and I hope there's lots of footage of that if and when that ever happens, because the Schadenfreude would be very high.
Well, and I think that's one of the reasons why Trump is remaining in Florida, because I could be wrong about this, but if New York tried to have him extradited to New York, the governor DeSantis could probably block it.
But Trump is spending the summer in New Jersey, so.
Oh, okay. Well, I know Murphy would have his ass extradited.
Mm-hmm. Well, what do you guys think of your governor these days?
Yeah, he's okay. I mean, basically, the only problem I've had, and I was not happy about the way that the vaccination rollouts have gone. However, having talked to people in other states, as fucked up as it was here, we actually did better than most states.
Yeah,
which is kind of sad, because I'm sitting there like picking ours apart, and then realizing like this was shitty, and this is one of the best.
yeah. I mean, one of the things that the right keeps attacking him about is putting COVID patients in nursing homes at the beginning of the pandemic. And I mean, they're like, freaking out that he needs to be removed, he needs to be recalled, and blah 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 blah. And a lot of people died because of that decision. And they're kind of right.
Yeah.
He put a lot of COVID patients in nursing homes, and they didn't have the staff to take care of them. There was no way to really isolate them from general population. But we also didn't know a whole lot about the virus at that time. So it was like, you had to go somewhere with them. And it was a bad call. And I think there needs to be a certain amount of accountability. But other than that,
when it went through the old folks' homes, it was mostly the staff that was bringing it in from the outside, and that's how it went through.
Well, that's the thing. That's how my mother got sick. I mean, that's the thing. It wasn't so much that it wasn't like they were transporting people just at random into the nursing homes. Is what they said is that the nursing homes were not allowed to refuse patients who had it. Because what they didn't want, the elderly people to be basically neglected, stuck in somebody's house without the care that they need.
What they didn't want, they didn't want a repeat of what happened to gay people with HIV.
Right. Exactly.
When they were letting people die in the streets because nobody would take them in.
Exactly. So it was so if it was a mistake, it was done out of compassion. And mind you, and I say this as my mother did get sick in a nursing home, but and really the way it got sick, like you said, it was the staff. And well, in the case of the facility my mother's at, what they did was, it was so stupid. Like they contacted, as soon as they detected somebody and any staff and any patients, they isolated everybody. They thought they were doing good procedures, but then when they called me up like 10 days later and tell me my mom is ill, and I said, well, how did this happen? You guys said you isolated the COVID and non-COVID patients, and they're like, we did. And the staff that worked with COVID patients didn't work with the non-COVID patients, and vice versa. And I said, well, but did the COVID people handling COVID and the people handling non-COVID share any workspaces like locker rooms or bathrooms? And the line went quiet because, oops, we didn't think of that. It's like, well, how the fuck did you not think of that? If I go and walk into the diseased area, you could assume that I'm carrying the disease either in my body or on my hands or my gown or whatever. And I go to the bathroom and I touch everything. Now the bathroom is diseased, and anyone who wasn't diseased to come in is at risk. How did you not think of this? And I warned him. I told him. I said, my mom better fucking survive, because if she dies because of your sloppy procedures, you're gonna meet the end of every single legal avenue that I've got.
The only nursing home in Sussex County, Andover subacute, is right now, actually for almost a year now, has been basically embroiled in this massive scandal where they had so many people, so many of their residents die of COVID that they had them stacked up in a refrigerator because the morgue was no, in a shed outside. I'm sorry, in a shed outside, because their in-house morgue was overflowing. They had 17 bodies stacked up.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's yeah. That reminds me of what's going on in India right now. You've seen all they can't keep up with it. They're burning people in pyres outside on the ground, just because the crematoriums haven't got space for them.
I mean, well, yeah, when you see what's happening in India, it literally looks like when the Black Plague hit Europe, back in the 1600s, I mean, or late 1500s, whenever it was. It's and this is why I'm so fucking tired of the denialists, because and the people still try to tell me it's like the flu. I just want to like reach through the internet and punch these motherfuckers in the face.
Joe, it was supposed to go away on the 5th of November. Don't you remember?
Yeah.
It was all about getting Biden elected. That's what the whole thing was about. That was all what it was about. I mean, the fact that people still go off on these sorts of crazy. I mean, I'm prone to thinking in conspiratorial ways myself, granted. But I mean, there's a difference between fanciful speculation and outright stupid, I don't know. I mean, like the QAnon stuff, for example, or this whole thing about how COVID is just some sort of government hoax I mean, it is true that every government in the world that has to contend with COVID might use the crisis for to advantage themselves in other ways that they might not be able to do if there wasn't a pandemic. Let me put it that way. You know what I mean? No crisis goes to waste or whatever, that kind of thinking.
Right.
Okay.
But it's different in every country, China, Russia, America, India, different.
Yeah. Green Machine talked about a mass grave on an island in New York. That's Hart Island in New York. It's Potter's Field. If you ever heard of Potter's Field, that's what Hart Island is. They do mass graves. They have graves of homeless people, graves of sick people, graves from people that nobody wants. They go to Hart Island. It's been that way for many, many years. Back in the 80s, it was mass graves for people with AIDS on Hart Island. And now with the when the pandemic was at its height in New York, there was mass graves for COVID there also. So yeah, Hart Island.
Yeah, I mean, that's one thing too. I mean, you mentioned that, speaking of the homeless, to kind of veer off in another direction, at least for a little bit anyway. I was reading something today about some new technology that they put up to benches, so that like basically in order to sit on the bench you have to pay, and then there's like, I guess, a lift gate or something like that, just so the homeless can't sit down on the benches or lay on the benches. And I'm like, you know what? This is what's warped about, and the sad part about it is a lot of this anti-homeless technology isn't just employed by the right. I mean, it is predominantly, but there's also places in California, for instance, that do this shit. And I'm like, for all the money that you're spending to inconvenience homeless people so that they can't find a place to sleep, you could fucking house them. It would be cheaper.
Well, I mean, I don't even want to go off on a tangent about my feelings about homelessness, because it's one of my pet peeves. It's right up there, right behind racism and homophobia. Homelessness is like because those three things, I just don't think have to exist.
No,
I don't think in my ideal of a world, they shouldn't exist. And I know it's idealism and it's not reality, but it just, to me, it shouldn't exist. And it just,
No,
so I
you're
get really fucking pissed about it.
But that's just it. You're actually not being idealistic about it. That's the thing. It doesn't have to. It literally does not have to exist. There's the money to do it is there. And then even though they canceled the program, but even Utah found that it was cheaper to provide some place for people to live, albeit a small little place, and it was better for society than have them on the streets. I mean, it costs you less money, and it produces better outcomes across the board. So
Sure.
you can make, not only can you make a leftist argument again to do something about homeless, you can even make a conservative argument to do something about homelessness.
Yeah, absolutely right. I mean, public housing is cheaper than, you know, as you say. I mean, it's not just that. I mean, it just makes your entire community look better and be better. You know what I mean? I don't have a problem with paying a little extra taxes if it's put for compassionate use. If it just goes to feed the war machine, I have a problem with that.
Yeah,
you know, that's another topic. But no, in February, as you guys know, because I wasn't doing jamborees with you guys because I was in California with no Wi-Fi.
Right.
And we had to go. We were looking for a box truck to do some house removal with. And we had to drive down to Oakland to look for this box truck. And oh my fucking God. I haven't been to Oakland for a long time, 32 years. And down in the area near the Coliseum, but not there, because we had to go into basically one of the roughest parts of Oakland. And I knew that before I got there. But I mean, and there's always been a homelessness problem in all the cities in the Bay Area. That's a fact. But I was not prepared for what's going on in and around Oakland right now. You know, when you're driving off a freeway and you got the clover leaves where there's like the circles to go on and off. In the middle of all those, there's homeless encampments in all of them, everywhere, right along. There's homeless encampments underneath anything that can, like a bridge or a walkway or anything, lining. And in the middle of the street, there's a shanty town. I've seen homeless encampments before with tents and whatever, but I've never seen a shanty town where houses are built out of cardboard and corrugated plastic and corrugated tin or whatever, and just bits of plywood. There's like a whole street where everything's nailed to trees and whatever to hold itself up. And I'm just like, oh my God. And I said this about 8 months ago on the Breakfast Club Jamboree, but I mean, you know, because of COVID, we're going to have to sort of redefine what we think of homeless people in terms of what a homeless person looks like, because a lot of people have become homeless who never would have become homeless and wouldn't have chosen it for a lifestyle and blah, blah, blah. Some people obviously make a lifestyle of homelessness because they don't have a choice, you know? And I just hope that doesn't happen to everybody who found themselves homeless because of COVID.
Right. Yeah. I mean, the here in New Jersey, not all the way to the Pine Barrens, but in that general direction, a friend of mine was telling me about, cause he used to be do metal detecting, and he went and he discovered this like homeless village. Basically, it was like that, little shanty towns, all like cardboard boxes and corrugated metal and plastic and stuff like that. And he said it was the most surreal thing he ever saw, because here in New Jersey, one of the 3 richest states in the country per capita, and here were people. And like dozens of people, he said there's probably over 100 people living in this little makeshift village that was cobbled together of people just with no place else to go.
So where am I? Okay, here I am. So I have a question. Is there somebody in the chat that I'm not seeing? Am I like blocked by somebody?
Who, what?
Why would make you see that?
No, Joe, you said different laptop. Who are you talking to?
Green Machine. He said,
I figure out how I came back.
But he had the right plug. He's like, well, no, he didn't have the right plug. He had a different. Actually, had a different laptop.
This is the other laptop that just went kaput.
Sorry.
It's all right.
No, I'm laughing because I just got a message from Pete that Damon is asleep on the couch.
Oh,
yeah.
At this time of day, that never happens.
Yeah, really.
Yeah, he's not running around screaming. Yeah, he had a busy day though, so.
Yeah.
That's it. You just got to keep them busy as much as possible during the day. Well, that's why when we were kids, our parents sent us out to go do stuff because we'd run around like motherfuckers just everywhere, and then we'd be tired, and then we would shut up, and they could put us to bed at a decent hour.
Yeah, I see Rob's rubbing it into Michael in the chat there.
So why isn't Michael in here?
I don't know, but he messaged me earlier and said he wouldn't be able to come this week. Same with Sister Danger. She won't be here this week. You never know if anybody else will show up later on. I don't know. We'll see. Maybe Kazoo might show up a bit later. He has a weird sleeping pattern. He doesn't sleep normal hours. So
yeah. Well, that's true. Neither do I. I mean, mine are somewhat conventional because I have to, but given my my druthers, if I don't have to get up, then I'm up at 4 and getting up at 10.
Right.
Until 4, I should say, and getting up.
For most of my life, Joe, before I worked in construction, I used to think that sort of 4 o'clock only happened once a day, and that was round about sort of afternoon time. But then I started working in construction, and so I see more dawns now than I've ever seen in my life, and it's because not when I started doing that, it was in construction, and then I just, for whatever reason, now I can't help it. I'm up at dawn. I can't help it. Even if I can't see the sun coming through the curtains or whatever, I'm up the minute the sun comes up. And I kind of like it, to be honest. I but at the same time, the problem is it doesn't matter what time I get to sleep. If I get to sleep at 10, I'm up at dawn. If I get to sleep at 2 in the morning, I'm up at dawn. You know what I mean? So it won't matter.
Yeah, the problem for me is that whenever I try to go to bed early, if I go to bed at like 2, I'll wake up like 8. So I get about 6 hours. If I go to bed at like 10 o'clock, I'll wake up at 4. I never get any extra sleep. So
I know what that's like because I typically don't get more than 6 hours of sleep for most of my life, but you get kind of used to it after a few years. By the time I was 10, I was well used to it. Anyway, listen, let's not talk about sleeping. That might put people to sleep.
Before you switch gears, I just have a joke for Green Machine about being a morning person. Like, a friend of mine died. His funeral was at 7 a.m., but I didn't go because I'm not a morning person. Okay, I'll shut up now.
Yeah. So yeah. So I suppose we've already roasted Giuliani enough, right? Where do you want to go from here, Raven? Take the wheel, buddy.
I don't know. I don't know.
You're silly.
Yeah. I mean, the whole world sucks. So yeah.
Do you think there's a good chance that it will ever stop sucking? I mean, because the suck it's been like pulling in a vortex of suckage for such a long time now. And I have to believe, and I made a video about this like 11 years ago, but I mean, I have to believe that things are going to get better. I have to, I've got another generation coming through that I have to, it's important to me that the world gets better, So let me turn on another light, man. Hang on.
Well, here's the thing, though. I mean, there's suckage, but and there's always been suckage. But as bad as things suck right now, and I would argue that we've actually regressed a little bit, or maybe a lot. But overall, we're still better off than you go on ages past. I mean, that's why I kind of like when I see articles about the positive things. So with all the negative things going on, there's still positive things happening that are kind of dragging human society into a better direction. And so right now the conflict that's going on, because basically you have the right wing, anti-woke squad and anti-social justice warriors that are so upset about weakness. Basically, I kind of liken it to a line in The Great Dictator's final speech. He goes, the conflict that's happening now is but the passing of greed. And so what's happening is people who basically support bigotry and intolerance and all this kind of stuff, they don't like the fact that a lot of, as society is advancing away from them and their ideology, they are becoming more and more angry and hostile because they are more and more at a loss to stop it. So and that's what's happening now. So what's happening is, so it's not that there's more people that are horrible now. It's that the people that are horrible are more vocal than they've been in quite a long time. Because remember, the stuff that we talk about, the bigotry and the intolerance. I mean, that was just every fucking day. That was all the time, and that was a majority of the people. Now it's a very vocal minority of the people. It's a large minority, unfortunately, but it is shrinking. And so they basically are doing everything they can to resist. They, at some level, they know that this is their last chance to inculcate society with their garbage. So they fight against it.
Did you see Stephanie Rule completely tear apart the governor of West Virginia on television?
No, but I can't stand Jim Justice. So if she tore him apart, that makes me happy.
He just signed into law a anti-trans bill. Keeping trans women out of women's sports. And she questioned him about it. Can you give one example of this being an issue in your state? High school girls, can you give one example of this happening? And he said, no, I can't. And she's just like, you're 48th in life expectancy, 49th in health, whatever, all these stats.
Yeah, West Virginia is pretty low down.
You're dead last in infrastructure. And this is the bill that you care about? You don't pass any bills to fix your state. But this thing, which isn't a problem in your state, and the governor himself had said there's only like 12 trans women in our entire state, trans children in our state. And you had to sign a piece of legislation that stops them from playing sports. This is your problem. This is what you have to focus on. And it was actually pretty good.
Yeah. I wish I had seen her ripping apart. And what's your opinion, Rob, about why they're doing these wedge issues? I mean,
because that's why it's a wedge issue.
I mean, I don't know. Is it just me? Because it's obvious that it's a wedge. They're just blowing smoke. Do you know what I mean?
Right. Well, I mean, they are finding solutions for a problem that doesn't exist and selling it to people who don't know any better, and getting them upset on about something that's not happening on some kind of twisted moral grounds.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. And I was in I don't know, for those of you who know Chris Mowdy, I was in one of his hangs a couple weeks ago, and somebody was doing we got to look into this bullshit, and I was enraged because it was because I know what horseshit that it is. And what I've noticed, it's this, I find the anti-trans people the same as kind of like the gamer gators. They got to get to the bottom of this, but they never fucking try to get to the bottom of anything. They never look for any actual information. Like this one person was challenging. They were like, well, where, here's the thing. In that discussion, earlier in the discussion, there was a trans woman in the discussion, and they were talking about puberty blockers, and she actually talked about what the side effects are. We know because people have been taking these since the 80s, and most of the kids taking them has nothing to do with trans issues. It has to do with actually gymnasts, because in gymnastics, basically once you hit 18, when once you hit puberty, you're basically useless in gymnastics. So they take puberty blockers so that they can prolong their gymnastics career. And so we already know what it does and what it doesn't do because we have tons of data on it. And so here the one trans woman in the discussion explained what those were. And then later on, this person's like, well, we don't know. And I'm like, well, we do know. And the trans woman told you, and you didn't want to fucking listen. And now you're trying to act like this is a big thing. I'm like, first off, there's not that many trans women, period. There's not a lot. And the number that are actually trying to get into sports is even smaller. And so whenever you assholes bring this shit up, you literally bring up 2 trans women that defeated cis women in a sporting event. And by the way, one of those trans women was then beaten by the same cis woman later on at a different event. And in no case do we have any trans women just crushing everybody in the fucking sport that they're in. So we have no data suggesting this is actually a problem. So if they actually cared, they would look into it, but they don't, and they use it's the jacking off, the just asking questions bullshit to try to justify their bigotry. And I'm fucking not having it anymore. I'm just fucking done.
Yeah. Yeah.
I want to respond to Vegas real fast. Sorry, Wayne. Yes, anti-SJW is pro-bigotry. First off, I have no idea who the fuck Harville is. Are you talking about Carville? Secondly, bigotry is not the purview of only the right wing, as I'm sure you would say anyway. There are people on the left who have, it's more subtle bigotry, but have bigotry. So I don't give a fuck whether they're left and right. If you basically are against people being treated with dignity, then you're a bigot, whether you're left, right, center, or otherwise.
Plenty of people on the left are bigots. Take, for example, that woman in the spring last year who called the cops on that guy because he was bird watching in Central Park. Hello, Wayne. It's good to see you. Thanks and welcome to the show.
Yeah, glad to be here.
Hi,
what do you think about the discussion that you walked in on?
I don't really have a lot of opinions about this. I just want to treat everybody on an individual basis. If somebody wants to be identified as a female, I'm not going to be a dick about it. I'm going to, if I know that they want to be called a her and they're trans, I'll do it. And
but I mean,
I am the type of person, I do assume someone's gender though. Like I assume that and I know, I guess your name's Raven today. You've got boobs. I never even thought to ask you about any of that. I don't know what that's about, but you guys look like guys. And if one of you say, "Hey, refer to me as a she," I'll do it. I mean, it's just because of just not being a dick in general.
Did you guys see my picture? I should share my picture. I don't know how to do screen share, so I'm going to send it to somebody. Hey, Paul, is your Facebook open? Can you go to Facebook? Can I send you a picture that you can share on the screen?
I'll try. I'm not sure if it'll work. I'm not sure how to do that on this computer because this is an Apple computer. But let's try it. Go ahead and do it, and I'll see if I can go over there and get it. I got to open up my Safari right here.
All right. So where are you?
Yeah.
Hey, there you are.
Vegas. Everybody should be treated with dignity. Now, whether or not I accept somebody as transracial is another matter. As I said in that same conversation I was just talking about, I had actually said, as much as I think Rachel Dolezal is a cultural appropriator, the main reason isn't just because she doesn't have any African DNA, which she doesn't, but she also didn't grow up in any way connected to Black culture. She didn't grow up in a Black neighborhood. She didn't have a Black nanny. Nothing. So she's basically claiming something, basically to get credit for something that she didn't earn. And so I have no respect for her position that she's Black somehow. However, I don't as a human being, I think all human beings should be treated with dignity, whether I think they're an idiot or not.
Yeah, there's no such thing as transracial. It just isn't a thing. So, and Wayne, yeah, I mean, the issue what was that issue wasn't whether or not somebody was respecting somebody's identity or their pronouns. That's a different conversation. What they were saying is there passed legislation to keep trans women from performing or engaging in women's sports. Saying that because they're
it's hard to find any legislation that I would want to pass. So.
Yeah, well, yeah, I pretty much I figured that about you. But I mean, and the reasoning is they're not really women, they're men. But that would just saying that is just ignorant of science and what hormones actually do.
Yeah. So. Yeah, well, that's the thing, and to the whole thing of people that they try to conflate the transracial and transgender thing. The thing is, we all start out in utero female, all of us, and then we transform in utero. So there's actually a mechanism by which one can even easily understand that our genitals may end up one way, but we have internally, our internal mental wiring is different. And then Peach pointed out that when we look at trans women, that their brain states actually more match cis women than cis men. So whereas there is no mechanism for someone to be from a, from a genetic group that they're not,
Okay, hang on. I got an idea. I'm still trying. So carry on without me for a minute.
But, And,
Well, yeah.
Sorry,
Paul,
go ahead.
Paul, can you, are you the only one who can share a photo on here? Can somebody else do it?
I try it. Yeah. Do you have a share button there?
I've got a share button.
Do you have it? All right,
Yeah.
I'm going to send it.
Yeah, because I'm a bit inept when it comes to all this shit.
Let's see
I
if
don't
this-
know. I don't know how to use my Apple MacBook very well, to be honest. I'm still a Windows guy. Windows makes sense to me in a way. It's pretty. I suppose I don't know. It's very simple. And there's things I just don't know how to do. And I'm pretty sure I could just ask my computer how to do it, and it would tell me as well. But I'm too proud for that. Oh, someone else is here. Hang on. Let's see who that is.
Well, I'm telling you to share the
Oh, I
screen.
see it. Okay, that's the picture. Okay, here we go. That's Rob's picture or Raven's picture way back. How long ago? Yesterday?
Yeah.
Is that a filter?
Oh, that's last week. It's a makeup filter. Just a makeup.
You make a very attractive woman in that photo.
Thank you. Yeah.
There you go.
I saw that on Facebook. I didn't know if you were doing like a Snapchat filter or something like that. So
Makeup filter.
okay, cool.
It's a filter, but it's makeup. Just makeup.
I don't think I would make an attractive woman. I mean, I wouldn't make an attractive man either, but that's another matter.
Thanks for doing all that technical stuff for me, guys. I got lost there, and
No problem.
I'm a bit of a Luddite when it comes to technology.
That's what I live for.
Right. So Wayne, what's been on your mind in the way of the world these days?
I've been insulating myself from the way of the world these days. No matter where you look, on the left or right or in the center, everybody's gone batshit crazy. It seems like, everybody's so touchy. So I tend to stay away. I don't even know what's going on in the world, honestly. Right now, I don't. I mean, a little bit here and there seeps in. You can't get away from it all the way, but I've just been keeping my head down and plowing, man. That's what I'm just trying to provide for my family and being there for my friends, not really getting involved in the events of the world as much. And I've been happier.
I can dig that, man. In February, when I was in California, I didn't have any Wi-Fi or any television. So the only time, and I barely looked at my Twitter. And so the only way for me to find out anything about anything was Twitter. So I'll check it once in a while just to make sure, like the nukes hadn't gone off or anything like that. But other than that, I didn't really pay any attention to it. And for a month, it was pretty cool. I couldn't live like that. I probably could if I had to, I suppose. But I mean, like I'm an information junkie. I kind of want to keep up with shit. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I've been that way for a long time. I used to always check out the news, and I just got to a point to where it just hasn't really benefited my life lately. So,
well, there's definitely certain kinds of news that's true for everybody. Like, for example, people who follow celebrity news. What's up with that? Who cares about what this celebrity, why they decided not to eat at this restaurant, or like all that Meghan and Harry stuff drives me nuts, for example. Just as an example, or I never ever understood the whole Kardashians thing because I was abroad at the time. So I never saw any of the TV shows, or I know any of what that stuff is about. But it's just celebrity gossip to me. Do you know what I mean? I mean, I care more about y'all's life than I do about anybody out there who's famous. Do you know what I mean? That's just true.
yeah.
I mean, that's always been the case for me. Yeah, I couldn't. I've never cared. In fact, I wasn't. I think I was. It wasn't until I was like 14 or 15 that I even knew the names of people that were in bands I liked.
Well, you've got a thing of sort of you're sort of very against sort of hero worship in general, aren't you, Joe?
Yeah.
You know, whether it's a sports person or a musician or a movie star or anything like that, or even a politician, I suppose.
Yeah. I mean, to me, you know, I will admire people's actions, and there are people like, you know, as I've always said, you're one of my favorite people. There are people who, due to the propensity of their behavior, make me admire how they behave and the type of person they are inside. Now, if that changes, well, then, you know, that's another matter. But I think that, you know, if we have a tendency to make probably too many excuses for bad behavior of people we like, and we're too critical of bad behavior by people that we don't like. And so if we try to divorce the actions and the people and not, you know, get into that hero worship kind of thing, I don't say we're not prone to it. I'll say we're less prone to it.
You know, I did hear about, I guess they're making a big deal about Elon Musk being on Saturday Night Live.
Yeah.
Some reason that popped up in my Facebook. I don't know, but, and I guess, what did he do? I like, seriously, I don't keep up, but like, I guess they're saying that the cast of Saturday Night Live can choose whether or not they want to be there. What is he a bigot or something? What's going on with Elon Musk?
I wouldn't know.
Yeah. I don't know. Well, part of it is, I mean, I couldn't tell you specifics right now off the top of my head, but I know that there's a number of things he's done that, well, I guess when COVID started happening, he kind of revealed himself a little bit. I mean, what's really funny is that for the long time, the left liked him because they seemed like he was this visionary that's going to save us from ourselves. And of course, he's just, you know, a guy trying to make a lot of money. And if he can do that on the backs of people who admire him, he'll do it.
Wasn't Elon Musk the one who said he was personally going to fix the water in Flint?
Right. But then, yeah, that's what thank you, Agent of Doubt. Musk defied social distancing mandates at his factories. So here he was putting his workers at risk because he got to make his money, right? So, and that's why I never understood why people on the left deified him, because it's like, okay, just say he was as intelligent and forward thinking as people thought, which he isn't, but pretended he was. That still doesn't mean he's not exploitative of people if it comes time comes to it.
I didn't really ever perceive that people on the left were sort of pro Elon Musk. I mean, I think some people are just pro Elon Musk because of the SpaceX thing and, you know, all that sort of thing. And I suppose you have to admit it was pretty cool when he had the spaceship with the car flying with a fake astronaut driving the car. That made for some pretty good pictures, especially if you remember the movie Heavy Metal.
Yes.
You know, which it was clearly sort of like inspired by, you know.
Yeah. I mean, the thing is, well,
I have flat.
Go ahead.
I have flat earther friends, and I'm not a flat earther, but I'm really surprised these guys are. But they thought that whole thing was rigged. It was just for show. It was in a sound stage somewhere.
That's so humorous to me, Wayne. And like, I mean, like you're a much more tolerant person than me if you have flat earther friends. I mean, I might know someone who is a flat earther, but I can't imagine actually treating someone like, I don't know, because to me, there's certain things that I try, you know me, Wayne, I try to be pretty tolerant and non-judgmental, but there's certain things, man, that I'm sorry, I'm going to go straight to the judgment, you know, and being a flat earther is one of them.
Well, yeah, these guys though, I knew them in high school before flat earther was even on their radar. So it's kind of weird when you know somebody and at one time we were so much alike. They're best friends of mine. I mean, I don't hang out with them that much anymore, but we were all super Christian, super conservative. They veered one way and I veered another.
Do you think that the super Christianness has anything to do with their flat eartherness?
I think so. For them, yes. They use the Bible to justify their ideas about the earth being flat.
But the Bible doesn't say the earth is flat.
Well, that's the thing that gets me, because I've asked a number. Because here's the thing: as much as I'm not as prone to believing in conspiracies as, say, Paul, but I do know conspiracies occasionally happen. So, and when they do, the people who engage in them believe, whether they're correct or not, but they believe they're engaging whatever they're doing because there's some advantage to doing so. And I've yet to hear a cogent, rational reason that the flat earthers can give as to why anybody would do it. And the only one I've heard, the most common one I've heard is that somehow is to deny God. I'm like, yeah, but all the major religions believe that the earth is a sphere, and most religious people believe it's a sphere. So how could that deny God if it doesn't say anything in the holy books about it being flat?
I don't understand why every other observable planet or star is spherical, and then here's Earth out there as it's a pancake. I don't get it. It's inconsistent.
Because
it's inconsistent. I mean, for someone to believe the earth is flat, they must not have traveled outside the county they were born in. I mean, it really is that simple. Because if you've ever been on a mountain, you can see the curvature of the earth. I just drove 200 miles across the middle of Kansas, and it's so fucking flat that you can see the horizon is only a couple of miles away because the earth is curving down and you can't see it. You know what I mean? I mean, it's and like the whole myth about sort of, Columbus discovering the world was round. I mean, people have known the world is round for a long ass time. I mean,
Eratosthenes.
I can't remember which Greek guy it was, but
Eratosthenes.
He said that obviously the Earth is round because it casts a round shadow on the moon during a lunar eclipse. And also the Mayan culture. They didn't just know the earth was round. They knew about the precession of the equinoxes. So they knew that the axis turns around once every 24,000 years.
Right.
That's a lot of precise fucking math, right? Some very precise math, because Europeans didn't figure that shit out until the 18th century.
Right. I mean, that's the thing. And the other part is, if you look at, and I actually want to buy, there's one flat earther who's made a diorama that you can buy that shows the flat earth, and it has the sun and the moon on it. And I actually want to buy it, as much as I hate to give them any money. I want to demonstrate. I want to buy, because I want to make my own diorama, because they'll say that I'm cooking the books, I'm doing something somehow to fake it. I want to buy it, and I want to show, using cameras, that the phases of the moon would be impossible in the model that they give. And even if you could come up with a way that there was phases of the moon, the phase of the moon would be different from different spots on the earth on the same day.
Right.
So, and since that's not what we observe, it cannot possibly, be flat.
I know. It blows my mind. Like I say, people like this, Wayne, your friends must not travel very much. It's as simple as that. If you go to Lake Tahoe, for example, and you're on one side of the lake, you can't see the other side of the lake because the water is not flat. It's curved. It's curved. Because if it was flat, you could see the shore. It'd be right over there.
So, as we know, though, that the Flat Earth Society has chapters all over the globe.
Here's the real irony to me, is that back in the late 90s, the Flat Earth Society was down to literally one dude. One dude in Australia, and I know this because I wrote him. And I'm like, you can't possibly, like, I thought it was like a joke, right? I'm like, and he was like, no, and he started giving me all the arguments, and I was like, you're serious, aren't you? Like, and yeah, he was, and it was down to just him. And now there's literally millions of people on this piece of shit planet that think that the earth is flat. And like, what the fuck?
What's the appeal? What's in it for them? That's what I want to know.
Secret knowledge. People love to have feel that everybody else is duped and they have the secret knowledge. And if only people knew what they knew, they'd all see it.
Joe, you see me finally at last.
and that's for people that are like kind of obsessed with conspiracy theories. That is a lot of their thinking.
I love conspiracy theories. Love them.
Yeah,
I don't believe in all of them, but I love listening to them and diving in and seeing the logic behind them.
All right, Wayne, well, we've done this before in the Breakfast Club, but you weren't here at the time. So just for you, buddy, what conspiracy theory do you think is the most ridiculous, and what conspiracy theory do you think is the most likely?
The most ridiculous would be that there's elite people that are lizards drinking the blood of babies. I believe there's people who...
What's the ridiculous part of that, though?
The ridiculous part? Just the premise that there's lizard people. that there's like you remember that show V that came on in the early... That's what I think of. I'm like, I don't know. It doesn't. That's jumping the shark. I think that there's some things like if people believed, oh no, these are real people, but they're in a satanic cult. Yeah, I can believe that because I know that there are people like that. But no, these are like lizard people that are ruling the world. You know,
people who believe that think the Queen of England is one of them. They think the Queen is a lizard person.
But the thing is that's the funny part is that people, it's like they watched V and thought it was a documentary.
Well, lizards don't live as long as the Queen anyway, so.
Right. So Wayne, which conspiracy theory do you think? You know what? Maybe.
Well,
which do you think is the most likely?
JFK. I
Me
think.
too.
Yeah, I think there's a possibility that it was not a one man pulled that whole thing off. I think there's more to it that we don't know even now. And there was a reason why Trump didn't.
Every single person who knows the truth about what happened that day is already dead.
And I don't understand why Trump was supposed to release more of the what do you call the commission that whatever? Yeah,
the Warren Commission.
Yes, and he didn't even release everything that he was supposed to. So I don't know what's going on, you know. And if anybody would have released that, I thought it would have been someone like Trump, and he didn't even release all that. So I don't know what's going on with JFK.
Well, that's why I'm no longer convinced that. Well, I haven't been convinced for a long time, but now I'm actually convinced that I'm convinced aliens have not. There was no aliens at Roswell because there's no way in fuck that Trump would have found out about that and not said something.
Right? Let me turn this off.
Well, I mean, the funny thing is, though, I mean, twice during Trump's presidency, they basically announced that UFOs were real and gave out the same footage twice, mind you. First, it was like unofficially released, and then they finally officially released it. And the State Department or the Navy or whatever, I guess, says, yes, this is real. We don't know what it is. Here you go, folks, deal with that. And in the middle of the pandemic, of course, the government saying, hey, we know there's flying saucers didn't even register as a news thing because of all the scandals that were going on at the time last spring. You know what I mean? I mean, you know that there's the black and white version of the movie, The Day the Earth Stood Still. The flying saucer lands on the fucking White House lawn. And I think that's what it would take for people to think, okay, they're here. I mean, for people to like worldwide sort of believe it, because I mean, there's been things in the sky. I've personally seen things in the sky I can't explain many times, and I just can't explain it. The same way when I see evidence of ghosts. I don't believe in ghosts for a second, but there's things I've seen happen, and I got, fuck me, I don't know how that happened. You know what I mean? So, you know, because I can't explain it doesn't mean there's not an explanation.
I mean, for me, I would say the least based in fact would be either the hollow Earth or expanding Earth thing, because I mean we can measure the mass of the Earth, and we know for a lot of reasons what the composition of the Earth is at various points. Neil Adams is a comic book writer. It's like he does graphic novels and comic books, and he did this originally just as a comic, and then somehow he convinced himself that it's really happening. And I'm like, talk about jumping the shark. Like you make something up that's fictional, and then you start to believe your own fiction. Hey
Joe, do you know how much the Earth weighs?
I don't, but I could find out very quickly.
I'll tell you right now, it's 6,600 million tons.
Cool.
Yeah. And
How
I
do we know that?
I know that because of Vangelis. There's a song. One of the sort of when I was into New Age music a little bit back in the day, I like Vangelis quite a bit. And there's a song called Albedo 0.39, I think. And I highly recommend looking it up after the show and listening to it, because you close your eyes and listen to it, and it's like you're orbiting the Earth. That's all I can tell you.
Yeah. And actually orbiting the Earth is how we know how much it weighs, what the mass is, because once we figured out all the orbital mechanics stuff and the gravitational constant, and we tested it with all the other planets that we can observe, we then applied it to Earth, and you could actually back calculate, since we know the rotational period and the radius and all that. All you need to know is the base and the angular velocity
of the Earth, its distance to the sun, and the relationship that would cause blah blah blah, and you can work out the mathematically work it out that way.
Exactly. So you actually back calculated the mass of the Earth that way.
Yeah. I love outer space. I like space stuff. But I mean, I know we've talked about this before in the Breakfast Club, but not with Wayne. But I mean, basically, Wayne, since we just mentioned it, do you think aliens have ever been to Earth?
If they were smart, then if they have, then I don't think that they would ever want us to know about it. Yeah, I mean, maybe so. I don't think the crop circles are aliens or anything, but it's possible. I believe in aliens. I don't know. If they were here, then they were hidden, and that's they probably saw the shit show and they decided they just wanted to observe from afar.
Yeah, Earth is good from afar, but far from good. And I kind of feel the same way. I mean, I guess I'll say this. I think that statistically, and granted, we make a lot of assumptions in the Drake equation, but the fact that there's even more planets than we thought there were, and we're finding more and more, planets in a habitable zone around their stars, I think the likelihood that there is life somewhere else is pretty high, although we can't probably calculate it. And I think it's not unreasonable to think that there's a reasonable chance that there's intelligent life. It may even be reasonable to think that those aliens have the ability to travel interstellar. But I think it's unlikely that they would have ended up here, although I can't say for sure that they haven't. I hope that there's intelligent aliens roaming around looking at shit. If they are out there and if they're basically peaceful, I would kind of be cool if they came here. And find evidence that they either have or are or will.
But if they were smart, they would not make themselves known to us. People would exploit them, kill them. I mean, it already happens.
Any being who had the power to get here from someplace else was more powerful than anything that we could inflict on them, almost certainly. You know what I mean?
So, I mean, I think it's fairly likely and possible that we actually are the aliens. That the beginnings of what made the human race quite possibly came from other planets.
You've been reading Douglas Adams again, haven't you?
I'm
so you don't think we evolved from?
Oh, I do.
But
I think I think we evolved, but I think the things that we evolved from, the possible organisms or the ingredients that created those organisms came from probably Mars. So
that's an interesting theory. I know that I have the banana and me have 40% of the same DNA. So I'm pretty convinced that we all come from the same chain of biological evolution.
Right. Nothing I said conflicts with that.
Right. So
you think this was way far back then? Like whenever we were just little amoebas before
even before that.
Okay.
So that's called panspermia, the idea that the building blocks for life on Earth came from somewhere else.
I personally don't buy into the panspermia theory, although I understand the reasons for it. But I mean, it just moves. It's just the infinite regress question just moves one space further away.
Well, here's the thing about that, Paul, is that we know because we've detected amino acids on comets and on meteoroids and asteroids and so forth. So we know that the blocks to form that start life exist in the vacuum of space. So if that's possible, then they could have been transported here when the solar system aggregated.
Well, I know I'm like wacky and stuff because I've done too many drugs and shit, right? But like, I think that human beings evolved on this planet as just another one of the primates. And then the panspermia thing isn't to bring the DNA to this planet in the first place. It brought mushrooms. And once upon a time, some baboons or whatever, some monkey type hominids took some mushrooms and had the very first ideas, right? And once you start having ideas, it's all over. You know, intelligence will just manifest. That's what I think. I think it's all because of drugs, because fungi, mushrooms, are neither plants nor animals. And they don't follow the same chain of evolution as far as I'm aware.
They do, but the thing is that in the earlier, if you go back far enough, there was a point where the difference between Animalia and whatever we call the plant side thing were a lot closer together, and so you end up with this triple thing coming out. So the break between Animalia and all the other stuff happened a long time ago.
So
I heard that now that fungi have as much in common with animals as they do with plants. They have, as far as it's kind of like they're more alive than plants are. More, I don't know the right word for that.
Yeah.
I guess you get what I'm saying, though.
Yeah. Well, that's what I was just saying. That basically, when life branched out, when the initial thing that we would call proto life on the planet happened, it started splitting, and you ended up with Animalia, whatever we call the plant group, and then there's the whatever the funguses belong to, and so they're in between us and plants. So I think plants actually split off first, and then the resultant thing that split into Animalia and funguses.
So one of the most interesting things is the World Wide Web. The World Wide Web that has existed for thousands, millions of years. And that is the mycelium network that covers the entire planet, that plants use to talk. They use to communicate over great distances. That is one of the more recent, I guess, discoveries. And that is amazing.
Oh yeah.
So
even to the point where they found that trees in a particular region that are, that some have better access to water than others, that the trees that actually have more water will give up some of their water to feed to give it to some of the other trees.
Another thing they found is that trees sleep at night. At night, they relax their branches and they drop enough that's measurable, and that's trees are relaxing at night.
Wow.
Nice.
Well, sure. I mean, we can get into the. I mean, Raven, how much consciousness do you invest with a plant with?
I won't say zero.
Right.
You won't say what?
I won't say zero.
Right.
Because we see plants that do things like direct their own movements as they grow. They grow around things. They grow through things. They reach for like power lines. You see this all the time when plants grow up poles, and then you see a shoot off the main branch. You'll see shoots that are reaching for like power lines or for like another tree branch or something. How do they know what's there? How do they know that?
In fact, to a very personal example, when Suzanne and I, before we bought this house, the previous town we were in, we had a small garden, and we planted cucumbers, which are a vining plant. And what was interesting was I kind of did a test. So we had this thing that was growing up we had like 2 sticks and it was growing up between the 2 sticks. I added a third stick near the other two sticks, and within 24 hours, a new tendril was formed, shot out, and wrapped around that new stick. Now, how the fuck does this thing know the new stick was there? And that's the thing. It was one thing if it was a tendril that just happened to be blowing around and hit it and wrapped around. This was a brand new tendril that within 24 hours grew and found the stick and wrapped itself around.
I did something similar with a grapevine. I had a grapevine 2 years ago, I guess it was. And every day I went out and checked it. And every so often I would like get peach. And I was like, you got to look at this. You have this. This is amazing. How does it know? How does it know?
Well, see, that's the thing. I used to be one of these like hardcore. No, plants aren't conscious, man. No, definitely not. But when I remember when I was a kid, I read every Sunday there was like Ripley's Believe It or Not in the newspaper, right? And have like some odd facts or whatever. And like a live oak can have as many as 1 million leaves on it, right? And even if there's no wind, that tree will make sure that every single leaf gets some sunshine throughout that day. No matter where it is, or whatever, it will twist its leaves and move its branches and whatever. So plants work on a different time scale to animals. That's all.
Right.
I know when it's going to rain, like in the middle of summer, when rainstorm is coming. If you notice, the trees will turn their leaves, so the bottoms are facing up.
Right.
And it's to help them get more water. How do they know?
It's a whole different level it's a whole different level of intelligence that I don't think I could comprehend.
Yeah. I mean, and it's just like a different level. It's a completely different kind. You know what I mean? No, they don't have a central nervous system. Yeah, they don't have a central nervous system. Like, neither does an octopus.
I was just about to use octopus as an example because octopus is one of the most intelligent animals on this planet.
And they've got 8 brains.
Wayne, did you know that octopi have 9 brains?
I did not. Oh, in their arms or tentacles
up here, and then they've got 8 more, 1 in each arm, and each arm independently can do whatever it wants to.
And it also knows what all the others are doing, though. I mean, it's really fascinating. So they don't really have so much of a central nervous system. They've got an outsourced
in my line of work, we would call that a distributed control system, which is actually very sophisticated. It's actually more sophisticated than what we have, because if we get hit in the head, we're fucked. That's our one place, and if that goes, we're doomed. Whereas, they don't. Now, I want to correct something that Green Machine said. It's not that Green Machine said is wrong in the general sense, but in reality, in the practical sense, it's not necessarily true. Green Machine said, except the meat we eat eats more plants than we would. Here's the thing about that. That's if you only feed the animals on, like plants. But what we do, like, for instance, hogs, I know this for a fact, that hog farmers receive food waste from other businesses. For instance, I remember back about 20 years ago, they started getting like potato chips that didn't make the grade. And also the trimmings, like when they make potato chips, there's quite a lot of potato waste and skins and all that. Well, hogs will eat all that shit. So they're eating something that we can't eat and wouldn't eat. So when you look at conversion rates, you can't look at just that, well, it needs so many pounds of stuff, because it's not necessarily eating something that we could eat. That's why I actually advocate for people who don't want to give up meat, but want to improve their carbon footprint to eat goat. Because goat eats everything. They eat brambles, they eat bushes.
Goat will eat a fucking tin can if you let him.
They'll eat all sorts of stuff, and they'll eat scrub grass, lichen, all sorts of stuff that humans could never eat, and stuff that can grow on land that's not arable for human consumption.
So where I live, I mean, I live in farm country. And when I was a kid, it was even more so. There's a lot of cornfields here now, lots and lots of them, corn and pumpkin. But when I was a kid, there were a lot of dairy farms, and there were a lot of hog farms. And the pig farmers used to go at the end of the night. In the middle of the night, they would go to Dunkin' Donuts, and all of the leftover donuts from the day they would get from they would just like donate them all in big plastic bags, and that's what they fed the pigs was donuts.
Yeah, that's right. And so as a result, so actually you could
As a result, it was really fat pigs.
That's right, that's right. And the thing is that so you could end up growing, raising goats on nothing that's edible for humans. 100%. So their conversion rate is zero because they're eating nothing that we could have eaten in the first place.
Yeah, I don't think goats are probably very tasty. They sure don't look tasty.
Oh my God, you never had goat?
But I mean, well, I don't know. I've had goat milk, but I've never actually eaten a goat.
No. Goat, actually, have you ever had goat? I think actually goat tastes better than lamb. I don't like lamb. There's a lot of
I don't like lamb either.
Yeah, it's got a lot of connective tissue and is very strong tasting. Goat's much milder, has much less connective tissue. It's rather good. And I'm like not one that get really, adventurous with what kind of meat I eat. So I would say
here's the thing. And I know, Wayne, you're a vegan, so I hope this is not uncomfortable for you. But
well, I could update you. So I'm not vegan anymore.
Oh, okay. Well, there you go.
I have reasons we could go over if you want later.
Well, if you want to, but I mean, it's not really up to you. But I mean, from my point of view, though, I've always found it interesting, even when I was a little boy, that we have some animals that are acceptable to eat, and then some animals that are not acceptable to eat, and how sometimes different cultures eat different animals. Like for example, in China, they eat a wide variety of bugs that I would never eat. No matter, I guess if I was absolutely starving and it was like post-apocalyptic and there was a bug, I might eat it. If I was Papillon in a cell in Guyana, I might eat it. Right? But no. So Wayne, what happened?
Well, it was I'm diabetic, and it's pretty simple. Why is ethically I still I feel the same, but man, I could not get my blood sugar down eating all vegetables and rice and beans and stuff. So I had to go to a low carb diet in order to get, because my A1C was 11. I don't know if you guys know anything about that, but that's like,
holy fuck,
that is bad. And that woke me up. The doctor was going to be put me on insulin. And I said, oh, wait, let me try to change some things about my diet before you do that. So I did, and I got it down. I'm still working on getting it down, but my last visit, it went from an 11 down to a 7.5, which is still high. But I'm on a trajectory downward just from eating low carbs, which means I am eating some meat, but I'm still eating a lot of greens.
Sure.
Well, and that's the thing. That's the same reason why I'm trying to cut back on at least certain types of meat anyway. But yeah, for the same thing, my A1C was 9, a few months ago, and so the same thing is like it's not. It's basically impossible to eat a balanced diet and be totally vegan while having diabetes.
Yeah, I'm learning that. And I hated it too because I'm conflicted on the inside. I love pepperoni. I always have. I love chicken, and I didn't give those things up because I didn't like the taste. It was for mostly ethical reasons and some health reasons, but the health thing wasn't working out for me, and I got to look after my family, and it's better for me to be alive to do that. So
what's the thing? And I think, basically what you're trying to do is, I think, a very smart thing.
Right,
you're still limiting your meat intake, but you're basically doing so in a way that's healthy for your body. And I think I don't think anybody should ever criticize you, because you know what, you shouldn't have to die because you want to be ethical. I mean, at least not over food anyway. So I think that and that's what kind of where I'm at. Like if somebody can present me with a way to do it that would not destroy my blood sugar, because you can't, with high carb, you can't be eating lots of rice and beans and potatoes and all that, because. And there's a really good channel on YouTube I'm subscribed to, and it's called Fighting Diabetes, and he's actually a Christian minister, but he doesn't get like preachy about it. He mentions his religion, but he doesn't really get preachy about it. And he's basically done these tests where he says, okay, vegans are trying to tell me I can eat X, Y, and Z, and he does the test and he shows his sugar at 30 minutes, 60 minutes, 90 minutes, and 120, and then he does meat, and here's the plot. I know. Yeah, and I know for
I
myself.
watch him too.
Oh, you know him. You exactly what I'm talking about.
He's a part of what convinced me.
Yeah, that's good. Yes, you know exactly what I'm talking about. And yeah, his wife's African, and yeah, so that's kind of, and that's actually what helped me, because when I found out it was up so high, I started being more cautious about what I was eating, and I got my blood sugar, not my A1C, but my overall blood sugar down very rapidly, just drinking lots of water and eating lots of protein, and like you said, greens to the point I can tolerate them.
Do you have an adverse reaction to greens, or you just don't like the taste?
Just don't like the taste.
Oh, okay. I'm like, spinach makes me break out in hives or something. Yeah. I didn't know.
Well, I can eat raw spinach as a salad, but cooked spinach is nasty. And I like cabbage, and I'm cool with like iceberg lettuce. But there's not too much. I mean, vegetables are not really like, I can deal with basically the mirepoix, like carrots and onions.
I love veggies. I eat veggies like crazy. I'll eat veggies. Broccoli, love me some broccoli. Like day after tomorrow, I am making a broccoli pesto. Oh God, I can't even wait. I keep thinking about it. I can't even wait to make it. I love. Peach doesn't like veggies, but I'll eat veggies like a fucking rabbit.
I like him just fine, but I have to admit, like most of the time y'all have known me, I've been single, and when I'm single, I don't take proper care of myself. So having a woman in my life like I have now means I eat better than I've eaten in fucking more than 5 years. You know what I mean? So, yeah. And vegetables are a big part of that, because I'd have when I live in London, I'd have vegetables once a week, whether I needed them or not.
So kale. So I'm a foodie. That's one of my problems. I am probably the thinnest foodie you'll ever. I eat. I love food. And like one of my most favorite things was this sausage, potato, kale soup.
Yes.
It
was in a magazine. Suzanne's
they serve it at Olive Garden. And anytime I go to Olive Garden, I absolutely, yes, I don't care what else I'm eating. I am definitely getting that soup. It's a Tuscan, whatever. Yeah. So I learned how to make it. Right, one of the main ingredients is kale. And it's the only time I've ever cooked kale, and I loved it. I thought it was fan-fucking-tastic. And kale gets a bad rap, but yeah, it's collard greens for white people. Yeah, that's funny, Jim.
Well, that's what kind of irritates me about it to a degree, because Black people have been eating collard greens for fucking 3 centuries, right? But it's always seen as kind of a lowbrow thing. And then all of a sudden, kale comes along. It's like, oh, kale! Look at kale!
And Becky loves it.
And Becky loves kale. They're both in the mustard family. They're both extremely similar. They're both fibrous. It's the same stuff practically, but one is like highbrow and the other isn't.
Hello, Kazoom. How you doing?
Hey, kids.
Hey, doing all right. Food. We're talking food. Okay.
Hey, Kazoom. Cool. Have you ever tried being a vegetarian for any length of time?
Maybe like in weeks, maybe a couple weeks at a time, and then I'm just like, no.
Right. I was a vegetarian for like 7 years when my kids were babies and young children, and then when I started eating meat again, I still maintained my kids as vegetarians. My reasoning being they could decide whether or not to eat meat when they grew up. I wanted that decision to be like an adult decision, not something that I sort of imposed on my kids, as it were. And people said, oh, you should do it the other way around. You should give them meat and then let them choose to become vegetarian. But that's like saying give someone cigarettes and then let them choose to quit. I mean, it can be really hard if you've eaten. I grew up on a ranch, right? And we used to eat beef like 4 or 5 nights a week. And so when I first became a vegetarian, it was like really difficult, both emotionally and actually. You just get like, when you're so used to eating meat, you think, well, what am I supposed to eat without it? You know what I mean? Yeah.
Yeah. See, the one thing for me too, like I thought about this a lot. As if it was possible for me to become a vegetarian, like if I could do it and find a way to do it without screwing up my sugar, I don't think I'd ever be a vegan, because I think, looking at things like butter and eggs, those can be created without serious harm to the animals. Like chickens just lay eggs just because they just do all the time. They're just constantly dropping eggs every like 30 hours or so. So you're not harming a chicken to take its eggs.
Well, I think
every
vegans
egg
will.
is a potential chicken.
Well, yeah, not all of them are fertilized, but I think the vegans are against the egg industry because of all the male chicks that are thrown into the little grinder when they're going down the conveyor belt. I don't.
Yeah.
There,
that's kind of
if you buy from a factory farm, then there's a lot of that goes on. Even in the egg and dairy industry, there's a lot of animal abuse.
But I mean, but they're also
from a vegan perspective,
right? But so against honey.
I never understood honey the whole time. I was vegan 7 years. Never understood honey.
Well, and I actually found a big problem with being against honey also, because almost all fruits and about 30% of our vegetables are pollinated with those same honeybees. So it's like we're going to be making honey as a byproduct of making your vegetables and fruits to eat. So you'd have to give up everything except like tubers and a few other things, and like mustard and like the mustard family or something like that. And you wouldn't be able to eat anything else if you actually like went to its logical conclusion, because that would be the only way we could actually get rid of honeybees, would be if we didn't pollinate them.
Well, I think obviously being a vegan is more about what you do or don't eat. Being a vegan is about, like the clothes you wear, the things you buy. Like, for example, I have some friends who are vegans in London, and they like the carpets in their house. When they moved into a house, they got rid of it because it had some sort of animal fibers in the carpets. And it's a whole thing. It's not just about what you eat.
No, I know.
It's a whole approach,
But I mean, the same thing.
I still steer clear of purchasing leather goods and stuff like that. I buy fake leather.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is that like and what your point, Wayne, about abuse in the animal industry, totally true. I don't disagree with that at all, and that troubles me as well. The thing is that at least for people with economic privilege, it's possible to purchase from sources that don't engage in those behaviors. I don't know that it's possible for the average person. I think that's probably cost prohibitive, unfortunately. Although
farmers markets and local farms, you could get meat and plants there and be okay. Well, I think. And
I think also the other thing too about the industry, as much as the industry doesn't, is doing what it's doing, the more that they see that there is a market for those things, the more likely they are to turn, which is why just in general, you see that's why there's just so many vegan options now, because there's a market. So someone says, there's money to be made, then let me get in on that. So if we say, if those of us who do consume or use animal products say, hey, I want my meat, I want my wool ethically, then I think we'll see more of it and fewer of the abusive practices.
I think we're starting to see more of that.
Yeah.
I'm annoyed by the organic label. That just annoys the shit out of me. People say organic. It's like, okay, is there carbon in it? Fuck you, it's organic.
Thank you. Oh yeah, well, especially as a chemical engineer, when I hear people say that shit, that and natural, and I just want to like sit them down and slap them. Like, you don't want any fucking idea what you're talking about. Or the people that complain about some additive that's in a food and say it's an acid. I'm like, you have highly concentrated sulfuric acid in your stomach, and if you didn't, you wouldn't be able to fucking eat, you moron.
They drink orange juice. They drink orange juice every day, though.
Yeah, there's the people who think that if there's something they can't pronounce in the ingredient list, it must be bad instantly, and it's just like, no, research it. I love having one of these because I can actually look stuff up. I might be standing there like an idiot for a long time, but I can look up everything that's in a product that I'm going to buy.
No, you're not standing there like an idiot. You're standing there like a smart person who wants to understand things. Idiots are the ones that go, oh, I don't know what it is. It's really kind of infuriating too, because there's so many things. Again, people don't understand chemistry, they don't understand biology, and so they fall. Well, even the whole high fructose corn syrup thing. I was just writing about this today. That chemically, there's nothing wrong with high fructose corn syrup. The ratio of glucose to fructose is almost identical to honey. And if you eat honey and you have no fucking problem, then high fructose corn syrup shouldn't bother you because it's effectively chemically the same shit. Yes, exactly. Chemicals. Or like the the Dr. Swatch commercial where they say, your soap is classified as synthetic detergent. And I'm like, every soap is classified as synthetic detergent because every soap the detergent is defined as a surfactant, and anything produced by saponification is a fucking surfactant, you fucking morons.
And honeybees are invasive here, and that's true. Honeybees in the United States are actually the European honeybee. So they're all an invasive species that we're doing, desperately trying to save an invasive species. So. Yeah.
Well, it's honeybee dying off. Is happening in various different parts of the world, and I think it's a concern. There's an episode of Black Mirror, which takes place in the UK, where the honeybees have died off, and so in order to maintain agriculture, they have made these little sort of robotic drone, literally like miniature drone honeybees to go and pollinate all the flowers.
Yeah, I saw that.
That's both genius and terrifying at the same time, right? Because what if it came to that? What if we had to find what if we had some kind of catastrophe where we lost all the bees, like all the bees? What the fuck would we do? We'd go
mass starvation. Yeah. Mass starvation.
We would have to manually pollinate them. I mean, and then there's some places where they already do. They do that. They'll pollinate with paintbrushes. They pay people to do that.
Or wasps.
Or wasps. But it's like with a lot of the times with the things that they're doing manually now, it's for things that not honeybees but bumblebees. Like there are certain vegetables that are pollinated primarily or exclusively by bumblebees, like tomatoes. Tomatoes is one that's by bumblebees. Honeybees don't pollinate them, and in some places, especially where they're greenhouse grown, and they don't have the bees aren't inside the greenhouse, they do it with paintbrushes. So.
You know what the most invasive species invasive species that's around?
Human
grass.
Oh well, grass is Asian.
The grasses we use for our lawns because we pick them because they look pretty. They're not none of them are native species, and so that's why they keep dying off, and we have to spend so much money in water and other things in nutrients to try to keep them alive because they're not from here and they're not supposed to be here. If we actually let the natural grasses take over, the local grasses, excuse me, not natural, the local grasses. Masturbation. Well, I guess if we're all starving to death, you might as well get a wank in before you die, right? Yeah, well, I guess if we're starving, we won't be the Breakfast Club anymore because there won't be anything to have for breakfast.
Yeah.
If we all starved, the planet would not miss us. If the bees died out and starved, then we're in deep trouble.
Yeah,
that's very true. Actually, I mean, the world existed for millions of years, and everything worked on just fine. Ecology just ticked along, and that's how it was. And species rose and species fell, and blah blah blah. And then we come along and wiped out. In my lifetime, more than half of the animals in the world have died. In my lifetime. Yeah. And that blows my mind. That makes me ashamed and terrified for the future, because if that's where we're at now, what's going to happen when my kids are the age I am now? What's the statistic going to be for them? We used to have animals once. Now they all live in a museum and a zoo or whatever. It's kind of scary. And
this is why I believe in personal responsibility, because if we're we're waiting on world leaders to dictate our usage of plastics or whatever the case may be, we're going to wait a long time. It's probably going to be too late. I think I don't drink bottled waters anymore after watching this documentary about all the shit that's in the ocean. I don't take straws at restaurants. These are things that I think we need to have our own revelation about how to deal with this. But
Sure.
When somebody's telling you from a central planner, you can't do this or do that, just for spite, that's going to make more people want to do it even more out of their ignorance. So I think people need to be educated.
Well, I agree with you, but here's one problem. But I agree we should do all those things on our own. And I know for myself, I do. I'm doing the same thing. I don't take straws. I keep telling the delivery services not to send me the fucking plastic dinnerware because I have stuff. I've got tons. But the thing is that Rebecca Watson did a really good video about this. That if all the citizens, all the private individuals did everything right, that's only 10 to 20% of the problem, because industry is doing most of the damage. So while we as citizens certainly can and should do whatever we can do, this is where we have to get government involved, is to set those limits on industry to stop them from doing most of the damage.
Case in point, plastic bottles that soda pop comes in, right? When I was a child, there was no such thing as a plastic bottle that soda pop came in. It was all glass bottles, and you paid a deposit for the bottle, which you then drank the Coke or the Pepsi or RC Cola or whatever, took the bottle back, and you got 10 cents for it, and all that shit got recycled. And then when plastic bottles came in, not only, in my opinion, does the contents taste inferior to how they taste if they're served in cold glass, but they go warm within minutes, especially if you live like Wayne lives in Louisiana. If you get a cold bottle of fucking Mountain Dew or whatever, it can't last you 5 minutes in the summertime, right?
You have to gulp that sucker down quickly.
So yeah, and and now we've got literally 3 mile wide flotillas of shit in the ocean, which is mostly plastic bottles and plastic bags, mostly.
And even more scary is the microplastics.
Yeah, and the microplastics in the water. I mean, and like, yeah, I want to echo a little bit what Joe said. I mean, even if private citizens took personal responsibility, and did everything 100% perfectly, yeah, it's only 10 to 20 tops, 20% of the problem. Corporate America, industry, and government are because the government purchases tons and tons, and I mean, for some items, they are the world's largest purchaser. And it's things that we don't really need the government to be buying if there's other ways to do it. But they don't work that way. They go with whatever's the cheapest. And it's not even really the cheapest for them because they end up getting overcharged anyway, for like the $300 hammer and that kind of fucking shit. But they're a bigger problem.
The thing about it is too, and this is something I might have talked about before, but back in the late 80s and early 90s, when we started getting, I don't say it was when we started becoming ecologically conscious, is when we were like rediscovering what they had done in the late 60s and early 70s. But there was a big push on recycling, which was a good thing. But one thing that never followed through was, while we started collecting everything for recycling, we didn't really build more recycling plants. So there's not enough capacity. And John Oliver talked about it a little bit recently, although he didn't really get into the thing about that we collect like 4 times more than we could possibly recycle, roughly. It's going to take political will, though, because no one wants a recycling plant in their backyards. That NIMBY problem again. So, but if we actually made a concerted effort and said, okay, we're going to be building these recycling plants, and we're going to make sure that everything we collect has to go to recycle. Anything that's recyclable has to get recycled. And then the stuff that's not recyclable, we have to burn. And I know it's not good to burn things, but it's either landfill or burning. There's no other way. So at least...
all that stuff that you say about the NIMBY problem, right? All that stuff people say, not in my backyard, right? My suggestion is it all goes to Ohio, because Ohio's already ruined, right? There's so much fucking industrial waste in Ohio, rotting, rusty, abandoned, just Ohio, man.
I thought Nevada was where they were bringing all that shit.
Well, there's so much empty space in Nevada, no one would even notice it. I mean, if you've ever driven across Nevada, there's a whole lot of nothing.
Yeah, I think Nevada is where they keep all of the nuclear waste. I mean, let's keep our toxins separate, shall we?
Yeah, right.
Nuclear waste in Nevada, toxic industrial waste in Ohio,
But
people waste in New Jersey. We got lots of that.
but the thing is, what I was saying about recycling. I mean, the thing is that we have anything that is recyclable has to, the things that we produce that can't be recycled and we can't find alternatives for yet, has to be burned for energy. We have to make trash to energy plants. What's fucked up, to show how sneaky the whole thing is and how you have to be careful about sources. Here in New Jersey, they were going in South Amboy. There was this coal burning plant. It was there for ages. They wanted to build in Perth Amboy a trash to power plant to replace that coal plant. Then this supposed environmental group cropped up and said, no, we shouldn't be burning things, which of course was ridiculous because the new plant was going to have way more emissions and pollution control than the coal plant ever did, would, or could. So it was going to be putting out literally 1/10,000 of the effluent. But basically this group scared everybody into getting rid of it. Well, it turned out that group was funded by people who had interests in the coal burning plant. So they didn't really care. So basically polluters tricked people into scaring people into think that the cleaner technology was going to hurt them. When meanwhile, that plant was using like, I forget what it's called, the high sulfur coal. But yeah, so it's basically like putting out, SO2, basically making acid rain, which is sulfuric fucking acid. And yet they're scaring people by a plant that would have been putting out 1/10,000th of the effluent.
I say we go nuclear all over the place.
Well, I mean, and I think we need that too, but we still have to do something with the non-recyclable solid waste.
Yeah.
I'm like super paranoid about nuclear, even though I know that might not be scientifically rational. I don't really know enough about it to have an educated opinion. All I know is that if something is going to maintain its dangerous, toxic, lethal quality for 250,000 years, then it should not be produced. You know what I mean? It just shouldn't be produced because there's no possible safe way to store it. And I know I've made this point before in the Breakfast Club, so I'll keep it brief. But I mean, 100 years ago, Carnarvon was traipsing around Egypt looking for the tomb of Tutankhamun. And when they found the tomb, it said, "Don't come in here. You will die," all over the doors. And then they went in, right? And there's no warning that you can put. I mean, you might be able to put a warning on it that your language will be fine. But in 10,000 years, that shit's still going to be toxic. And the people are not going to speak your language anymore.
Well, here's the thing, though. The French back about 30 years ago, almost 30 years ago, developed a way to reprocess spent fuel rods that would recover 50 to 60% of the material. So it would cut the waste down dramatically. And you can basically encase the leftover in cement and then put that in a vault. So it would be really, really hard for people to get to.
I posit that the harder you make it to get to, the more determined people will be to get it.
The thing is, the uranium that we use, I mean, it already exists. It's not like we're creating something that didn't exist. It's already in the soil.
Yeah, but and in some places it is concentrated enough to be dangerous to humans. Sure, even not uranium. I mean, was it radon? If you live around too much radon, that can be bad for you as well. Just as an example.
Well, radon is actually produced in areas where there's too much uranium in the soil. It's a gaseous radioactive decay product of uranium. That's why we have problem here in the Northeast, because we're sitting on a uranium ban. So when they had the problem in the 80s, when they started discovering this, at first everyone thought it was because of industrial waste, and they were saying, "Oh," then they found out, "Oh no, the uranium content in the soil is just abnormally high, and so it's just off gases that makes radon."
Right. In the 80s, the town I live in, this little country bumpkin farming town, basically had national news because the state of New Jersey was going to dump radioactive soil in our town, and we already have a problem here with radon because New Jersey basically sits on a big giant band of uranium. So they're dumping radioactive soil here, and the people in the town, they blocked the highways that come into town, Route 94, Route 23, and they blocked them with their cars and protests. And yeah, it made like worldwide news because the town stood up to the state and won.
Kazoom, serious question. Would you expose yourself to potentially dangerous levels of radiation if you knew you'd get superpowers?
If things work that way, I guess so. So
I think Kizzy already has superpowers.
I'll go with that. No, I don't know, man. I was gonna say, all my life I've been paranoid about radioactivity, nuclear power, nuclear weapons, because you can't have nuclear weapons without nuclear power. So therefore, I've always been automatically suspicious of nuclear power as just a cover for a way to make nuclear weapons. To me, because I remember in the 70s being sold the whole nuclear power lie, that this is the line they used to use, and I'm not exaggerating. They used to say, electricity will be too cheap to meter. It's going to be produced so cheaply, it might as well be free. That's how they sold us this nuclear stuff 50 fucking years ago, but that never materialized. Nuclear has always had subsidies from the government since day one, and that's never gone away. And the same government has thwarted attempts to promote renewables because of the favoritism towards nuclear, because of the necessary component that generation of nuclear power is to being able to refine fissile material.
I mean, I get your point. Although part of the problem with nuclear is that we never did enough of it, and a lot of the reactor designs were not that efficient compared to what we design today. If you the thing is, like in France, what they did was we had this tendency to build big reactors that are very expensive and harder to maintain. In France, what they did was they build 8 to 10 reactors at a site, but they're smaller. The combined cycle is as much, but what they do is they are set up so that they don't normally ever run more than 6 or 7 reactors at a time. So there's always one down for inspection, one down for maintenance, and one on standby in case they peak load if there's like summer and they need more power. So as a result, it's easier, like in the way the Navy, like if the core gets depleted and you have to change it out, they do in ships with nuclear ships, they'll literally bring them into dry dock, split them in half, open them up, take the core out and replace it. And that's like an 18-month process. But you can't do that. Like some of these big reactors, you can't do that. Indian Point just shut down this week.
Right. I just want to address something the Green Machine said in the comment section. He says, Paul, that's what Trump said about the Iran deal. I assume by that you're referring to what I said, that you can't you can't make nuclear weapons without nuclear power generation. The thing is, when it comes to the Iran deal, and Trump may have said that, I don't really know what Trump said about that as per se, but just because you say something that's factually true doesn't mean that you're necessarily telling the whole truth, because when it comes to the generation of processing material that you can use for weapons, the way they monitor it is I can't remember the number, but if you're generating below a certain number of kilowatts per month or kilowatts per hour or day or whatever it is, I can't remember. But if you're generating below that amount, then you cannot make fissile material with your nuclear power generation. You have to ramp it up to a certain level in order to refine it to that level. So basically with the Iran deal, if they were monitoring it so that they couldn't, they never went above a certain level, then we could trust that they weren't, refining the materials into making bombs. So, it's not just like, if they can generate nuclear power, they can make nuclear weapons. It's not that straightforward, but you can't make nuclear weapons without refining the material. And the only way that we've known that I'm aware of to refine the material is nuclear power plants.
Yeah, you basically use nuclear power plants to enrich the uranium to plutonium, and then you separate it, and they have to use centrifuges to separate out the different grade materials. And that's why, like, if you remember a few years back, we hacked. It was either us or the Israelis, but one of us hacked the Iranian facility that they were using their centrifuges, took over the control system, and basically spun them out of control, and they tore themselves apart.
Right. Which is a nice little segue onto something that has been in the news a lot lately, which is, the cyber warfare. I mean, cyber warfare has been going on pretty much since the birth of the internet, right? But it's been so much more sophisticated lately. And, last year I saw stories that the Russians have already cracked enough of our stuff that they could turn power plants off if they chose to. They could turn off whole electrical grids if they chose to. If that's true, and I don't know that it's true, because you're seeing something on the news doesn't make it true, right? But if that's true, what would be the appropriate response? Let's just say they turned off everything from New York City to Washington, D.C. for 6 hours, just to make a point. What's the appropriate response to that kind of violation of your sovereignty?
You'd have to at least respond in kind, just to show that you could do it back. So you'd end up with like a mad, but for cyber warfare.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of think that the most appropriate thing to do is, if they're there, then you build an infrastructure to replace the one that they've hacked into, so you can switch everything over before they can do anything to it.
And do you think that's do you think that kind of thing's already in progress, Raven? Because honestly, we know they've been messing with our stuff.
Yeah,
as somebody who works in power plants, I can tell you absolutely that's not happening. So in fact, I'm actually in the process of upgrading some systems. Now here's the thing: could they do it? The answer is no, because the problem is that most of the old plants do not have the infrastructure, and they do not have the outside access, so that the control systems are generally not accessible outside the plant. They're not their automation network's not tied into their plant network. So even if you got and hacked their plant network, you get to the offices, but you couldn't get to the control systems.
It never should have been tied in anyway, ever. I mean, there's certain things about your infrastructure that should be like foolproof from that kind of tampering.
Well, the thing is, there's reasons why you need to be able to do it, but the thing is that there are ways to block. For instance, 4 of my clients in the last 15 months, 4 of my clients had denial of service attacks where hackers got into their office network and shut them down completely, shut down all the computers, everything, locked the internet. But we actually have remote access in these places. However, we actually had special hardware firewalls that are designed that basically provide secure tunnels to get in. And the only thing in these facilities that didn't get hit were the automation systems, because we protected the automation systems behind these firewalls. Mm. And that's the thing that pisses me off, because one of the clients, like the company just got bought, last year, when they found out we had the remote access, they freaked, because that was the previous company knew about it and they were okay with it. They had it disconnected, although the site people ended up reconnecting it like a week later, because they needed us to be able to support them remotely. And it was like, guys, literally the only thing working was this stuff. So if the hackers could have gotten through those firewalls, they would have, and they would have fucked up the automation system, but they weren't able to do that.
Right. So, I mean, if the Russians are sitting with access to our grid that way over a computer system, and from what I understand, for certain grids, that they have that ability, that they can see that they're there. They know it's not even a secret anymore.
Right.
And for older plants and older grids and everything, they're not going to be able to get into it. But on newer ones, on more current, up to date ones, sure they can. Well, then I don't see why it would be such a difficult thing to build around. It's like you're remodeling your house one wall at a time, and by the time you get to the end, everything is brand new, right? So if they do that, and keep the new system separate from the old until they have to hook it in, they should be able then to kick them out, and then deny them access.
Yeah, I mean, basically
but
the
they're
part
not.
yeah,
They're
I
not
mean, the
doing
thing is that the stuff that's built very recently, so the brand new stuff has that kind of protection. It's the intermediate stuff. So the really old stuff isn't even connected to anything, so it's
Right.
it's safe because it's nothing. There's no physical connection. The stuff that's brand new has all this stuff. For the most part, has this stuff in mind. It's that middle stuff that is connected but is not sophisticated enough to have the protection on it. That's the stuff that's the most vulnerable.
Right. And no, I don't believe that they're doing anything about it. I think we're basically just looking at Russia sitting there, and we're going, well, what are we gonna do? What are we gonna do? They could shut us off. Yeah, they can shut you off. You gotta do something.
Well, I can't believe. I mean, I don't know. Maybe I'm a little too trusting, but I mean, I honestly think that the people who are in charge of our national security take these things a lot more seriously, and it's just that stuff like that doesn't trickle down into the information stream for obvious reasons. We don't want them to know what we know. We don't want them to know how we would fight back. We don't want them to know. Maybe we want them to think they can shut us down when they really can't, so that we can catch them trying to. You know what I mean?
Well, what stopped them from doing it so far if they could? Why haven't they done it yet?
So we don't retaliate.
Well, here's the thing about that, Wayne. I mean, I'm obviously not an evil genius, but if I was, that would be. If I was an evil genius, that would only be part of my plan. It wouldn't be my plan. You know, if I was going to invade and wipe out a country, that would be one of the weapons in my arsenal. It wouldn't be my whole plan of attack.
Yeah,
Right.
I mean, that's like saying, why haven't they launched nuclear missiles at us yet? I mean, it's a capability that they have, just never used.
Here's another one. During the Cold War, we know for a fact that there were Spetsnaz trained troops here, Soviet troops here in the United States that were plants that got like mundane jobs, usually driving trucks. So this way, that gave them reasons to be driving all over the country, and they would drive out these routes so that if we ever went to war, that they would get themselves to places to cause sabotage, to disrupt our communications and the like. So that's why they don't do it, because those are those assets you put in place for when you need them, because you don't want to start the war unless you have unless you need to. Because that will start a war in one way or another, whether it's only a cyber war or it gets to a shooting war.
This is what I really worry about, because the nature of conflict is escalation. I mean, that's just how things tend to work. You push me, I push you. You draw your fists, I draw my fists, and so it keeps going on until one of us is on the ground, right? And when it comes, this is why I asked it originally, I mean, what's the appropriate response? Because, I mean, let's just say you did do it back to them. I mean, before you had a chance to do it back to them, they would already be saying, if you retaliate, or they would probably be denying it in the first place. It wasn't us, it wasn't us, it wasn't us. And you'd have to go through this big rigmarole about proving it was them before you actually did retaliate. You know, I mean, do the words weapons of mass destruction ring a bell? I mean, we might not necessarily know or be doing the right thing just because our leaders want to attack a particular country or don't. I mean, this precedes the problem with Trump, because the weapons of mass destruction lie that was told during the Bush regime and maintained even after the Iraq war started for a long time before they finally said, hey, you know what? Maybe they're not here after all. But it was already too late. We were more than $1 trillion in by then. You know what I mean? And I don't know. I get so cynical about. I'm thinking about this mini series on the BBC that I watched just before I moved away called Years and Years. And Years and Years took place. It was fiction, obviously. It took place between 2019 and 2034. And in it, in Britain, it's a British show, so it was in Britain. And in it, there's periods of times where certain parts of the electrical grid just happen to go out for days or, whatever at a time. And the politicians go, well, just blame the Russians, when there could be other reasons. I mean, I just don't want a situation to develop where, let's just say, the Russians are scapegoated for everything that goes wrong or anything that goes wrong. I mean, I'm almost surprised they didn't say the Russians were responsible for all the havoc that was in Texas this winter, Oh,
well, we already know, Joe, you're muted, but we already know that Texas, you know, they already have a known history of shitting themselves every
Sure.
10 years or so. So
Yeah.
It just wouldn't have surprised me if they tried to blame Russia. That's all.
Yeah, I mean, and this is one of the problems too. I mean, because a lot of these concerns, a lot of this infrastructure is actually in the hands of private companies. There's no, without regulation forcing them to do certain things, they just don't, because that's why I know the libertarian world is all we turn it all everything should run like a business, but most businesses run really badly. I see this all the time. I have a lot of clients.
So do most governments.
Yeah, lots of things. A lot of those businesses run themselves extremely badly. Well, for instance, the power plant that we're doing some installations on this month. So they have 2 gas compressors, and we're replacing the control systems on those, and also on their demineralizer system for the water that feeds the steam turbine. Well, these systems that are running them right now, they haven't been produced since 2014. So if anything broke, it was impossible to buy. There was no to buy spare parts, and they had a bin of supposed spare parts, but all the boxes are open and all the Mylar is broken, which means those aren't spare parts. What happens is when shit would break, people would go and break out the new one and put it in, and then take the old broken part and put it in a Mylar and put it back in the fucking drawer, and then they think they have spares. And we're like, dude, if this shit goes tits up, your plant is going to be down for a prolonged period of time because they do not make these parts anymore. But basically they kept looking at it. Put it this way: the quotes that we're executing now, they were first written in 2014, and they're just doing the shit now. And so at any time, they just got lucky that in the last 7 years, none of it broke. And I've got tons of experiences like this where companies do this stuff, and particularly in infrastructure, because like in this case, it's a power plant at a university, so they've got a contract to provide power to the university. So, and then the contract only lasts, like, they got to get renewed every 10 years. So at the beginning of the contract, they're willing to spend money because they're okay, we're going to be collecting money on this facility for the next 10 years. But once you get close to the end of the contract, they don't want to spend the money because they don't know if they're going to get renewed, and somebody else might come in and collect the money. So they don't want to spend money on the systems. So this just shit goes on and on and on over and over again. And there's a lot of cases like this. And that's one big difference between the United States industry and a lot of foreign, like European industry, at least. The Europeans tend to stay up to date, and we really, really don't. This is one of the reasons why we're falling behind. That's why I keep telling you guys, don't be afraid of automation. We're not even fucking close to being fully automated.
Right.
You're muted, Paul.
Sorry. Right. As a thought experiment, years ago, I did a video called "What If Tomorrow," and the conversation we're having here kind of reminds me of that. But because in my "What If Tomorrow" video, what if, like, let's say there was a solar flare or some other sort of extraordinary natural event which wiped out all of our satellite systems, like all of it, the weather ones, the communications ones, everything, all the satellites in the sky, most of the internet would go down, right? And it's my
Everybody's
postulate,
Bitcoin will be gone.
I think an awful lot of people would freak the fuck out, right? Like, seriously freak the fuck out. Now, if it was a natural event like that, though, before we even figured out that it was a natural event, people would be pointing fingers at the Russians, the Chinese, the whoever, pick your boogeyman, right? And I don't know. I just really, really worry that we're overly dependent on our technology, and we're overly vulnerable because of our technology, and vulnerable because of our dependence on our technology.
I agree. I don't know what's going to happen if everything if there was a big what do they call it, EMP or whatever, like, if that happened, a lot of us would just die out, not knowing what to do.
Because
all the preppers would survive because they've already got all their guns and all their gardens and all that stuff.
Hey,
as you can tell from my gesticulations, I don't agree.
I have. I actually believe I've thought of that kind of a thing. I'm just like I've got about an acre of land, and I have a clean water source, water supply that runs right on along the edge of my property. Basically, it is my property line. If I need to, I'll grow my own food. I have the land for it here.
Yeah, I mean, we had I think a taste of it here in New Jersey after Hurricane Sandy, because the power was out. 2/3 of the state was without power for for several days at minimum to several weeks in certain areas. And I'll tell you what, like those first couple days, everybody was bemused. It was like they were stunned. They didn't know what to do because the internet was down, the phones were down, cell service was down, so you couldn't do anything. And people just fucking had no idea what to do. They were lost.
And the sky was beautiful. The most, I mean, that entire period, I remember like in the middle of the night, man, have never seen sky like that before or since.
That's pretty cool. I remember, I think it was 2007. There was a volcanic eruption on Iceland, which spewed like huge column of smoke into the sky, which was like, gigantic. And basically, they shut all the aviation down in Britain for 3 days. And for 3 days, there was no white plane exhaust streaks going across the sky. And if you've ever been to England, that's where most of the clouds seem to. I mean, it's constant. You never see that. That was the only time the whole time I lived there for 31 years. That's the only time I never saw plane trails in the sky, was because they had no planes in the sky. And you don't really realize how spoiled we are about stuff like that. I remember when I was a kid, and they were doing the moon shots. And I think we might have had one or two go up to the moon. And me and my granddad were talking about it. And my granddad said to me, Paul, when I was a kid, there were no planes in the sky. And now we're going to the moon. And I thought about that. That's one person's lifetime. He was in his 60s when he said that to me. And I'm almost in my 60s, around the corner, not too far down the road. And, I got grandkids and stuff. But what was around when I was a kid compared to what's around now? Yeah, lots of changes, but not so much as there were no planes and now we're going to the moon. I mean, that's a pretty dramatic 60 years. You know what I mean?
Well, when you mentioned, go ahead.
Go ahead, Joe.
Well, you mentioned the volcano. Suzanne was in Italy at the time on a work trip. She got stuck there for like an extra 8 days.
Right. Yeah.
September 12th, 2001, there were no airplanes in the sky over the United States.
Yeah, I remember that.
For several days, it was like that. And it was the weirdest thing, not hearing. I mean, Joe and I, we live in New Jersey. We have the most heavily used airspace in the world. It's, people talk about like chemtrails, and seriously, I mean, that's like it's a joke anyway, but to anybody who lives in New Jersey, that's kind of like a double joke. It's just like, seriously, you've never been to the Garden State if you're going to talk about chemtrails. But for almost a week to have, silence coming from the sky and none of the trails or anything, that was weird.
Especially because where I lived at the time, I was right in the flight, the landing path for Newark Airport when they were landing to the north. So they actually literally would be coming east. They hit my town and then they turn north to turn toward the thing. So they're constantly going over.
They line up over my town. At night, you go outside and look up, and you can see airplanes lined up.
They stack up. They stack up over his town. They would fly southeast, come over the town I lived in, and they would turn north. So the thing was, the only thing, and so it was weird because you're so used to that would actually your mind masks out the sound. And then because it wasn't there, the absence of sound was actually omnipresent. You're like, holy shit, where's the fucking sound? And then when you did hear sound, is like at the time they had combat air patrol. There were F-14s and F-18s patrolling, and these guys were running on afterburner half the time because you could hear them. And it was like, and that was freaky because you'd hear nothing, and then you hear.
Yeah. Well, I know the ground would rumble.
Yeah.
So some of them, yeah, they were flying, you could feel them coming and you could hear them, but like just the regular sound of like the passenger jets and all that just being gone was so eerie.
Well, and if you remember a couple years after that, when we had the blackout in the Northeast, I'm in the flight path of Newark Airport at the time, and I'm walking back to my house. I think I'd walked to a corner store, and I'm walking back, and I see this plane, and it's heading toward Newark Airport, and it goes just over the horizon, and just then I hear bang, pop, and then this rumble, and I was like, "Holy fuck!" And I thought I thought it crashed or got shot down or something. But what it was is when those were the like these massive breakers. Like when you have the electrical grid, each grid has has a way to isolate itself from the neighboring grids. And that was basically those things picking up, and then the power plant that in our area, because it was producing more than we needed, so it was exporting power. So when it pulled off, it had to. You can't just slow down right away. That it had to vent the excess waste gas and to slow down the generator. And so that was just that slowing down. So we actually didn't get blacked out because we actually were in a space that was safe and was producing excess power. But it was scared the shit out of me because I thought that's what was happening, that a plane got shot down or something.
So the power went out in the big blackout. The power went out. I was on my way home from work, and all of the street lights just all of a sudden just went dark and traffic was everywhere. You out, Wayne?
See you, Wayne.
And it was summertime, and it was hot. And at the time, I was living in Patterson. I was with Ozzy, and we ended up sleeping in Patterson outside on his back porch. And the next day, we packed up, and he and I went to Niagara Falls, and we drove to Niagara Falls during a blackout, which means there were no working gas pumps like in the newer gas stations. We had to hunt down, as we were driving, we had to hunt down the old-fashioned gas stations with the old-fashioned pumps so we could get gas. And we ended up making it. We get to Niagara Falls, and the falls were only running at like 30% capacity because they were redirecting the water to generate power. And there was no casino. The what is it? The Maiden of the Mist or whatever that thing is that they do there, that wasn't running. The casinos weren't running. So we got to Canada, got to Niagara Falls, and we couldn't do anything because nothing was happening because of the power outage.
Yeah, we got lucky. So we actually watched the blackout on TV.
You had power?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. We were in a zone where we had a power plant in our grid, and it was exporting power, it was producing more power than could be consumed by the locals. So when it isolated itself, it was still producing. So it just kept on going.
Nice. My friend Al, he also had power. He's in the next town over. He had power, like his neighborhood. So there was like little spots. The entire Northeast are just little spots with power. But yeah, I didn't have power.
Yeah, we actually went and picked, because my mother was still living in her apartment at the time. We actually went and picked her up and brought her to our place.
There you go.
Because it was hot and she had no air conditioning and she was sweltering.
Hey guys, I'm going to bring an end to the stream. I will see you guys obviously in the after chat, but I'm going to say goodbye to everybody in the audience now because I want to keep the stream. I'm in a hotel room, right? And I don't want to go on too late. So anyways, so thank you to everybody in the audience who hung out with us the whole time, especially when you I lost me for a little while there. And we'll see you all again next time on the Breakfast Club, where I shall be broadcasting from more familiar surroundings. Okay, say goodbye, everybody.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.